Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Tomorrow's Romance Dawn, Old Version, by OtakuWithHazelEyes. The Straw Hats have left Drum, ready to take on Baroque works in Alabasta. However, upon making a pit stop at a mystery island, they come across something they never expected to find: an older Zoro. Now they must locate the future crew, as well as keep treasure out of the hands of bounty hunters. Adios.
Gum Gum Rocket. Luffy. Wait, Luffy couldn't wait though. As he rocketed from the sunny with his usual zeal, all he could think about was the prospect of a new adventure. The last one hadn't been that much fun until the end. When he got his hat back from Z, this one was definitely going to be better, he could feel it. The trip through the fog didn't take very long. Frankie had taken the helm and very carefully steered the Sunny, as the fog made it difficult to see obstacles like rocks or reefs. They discovered there weren't any by the end, but still. Usopp had hyperventilated the entire time, while Robin made morbid comments about monsters possibly being in the mist. Naturally, Nami scolded her for saying such things. Brook had been unusually quiet during this time, until Chopper loudly suggested how a song would be nice right about now. Brook had delightedly complied by singing his new hit single, Bone to be Wild. Sanji went into the galley to prep pirate lunchboxes, knowing Luffy would be asking for them soon enough. Good thinking on his part. Luffy was sure to grab a few before rocketing off the Sunny. Zoro simply stood by the railing, keeping an eye out for the bounty hunters. How boring. Luffy spent that time sitting on his special seat. He didn't know why, but he felt something was missing from this experience, like the fog was supposed to be doing something weird. Once the Thousand Sunny exited the fog, to the crew's surprise, the gray mass was now a whole kilometer behind the ship. Nami had been bewildered, as fog couldn't have possibly receded that fast. Luffy hadn't really cared. Mystery fog could do whatever it wanted. They sailed the Sunny a little closer to the island before they dropped anchor. Sanji had come out with bentos wrapped in cloth. Luffy had grabbed some, which finally led to the rubber captain rocketing to the jungle like, well, as his crew would eventually put it, like a moron. Luffy's arms quickly snapped to their regular length, causing the rubber boy to slam into the tree he originally latched onto. The impact left behind a deep crater in the trunk, courtesy of Luffy's hard head. Luffy tumbled to the ground and laughed. She, these trees are enormous. This is just like Skypia but in the ocean instead of the sky. The straw hat wearing young man laughed for another minute, but stopped rather suddenly. He sat up and readjusted his hat. Something felt off. He reached out with his hockey, only to discover he was having difficulty hearing. No, that wasn't it. His hearing wasn't the problem. Something was muffling all other possible voices. It didn't feel like a beast, like Caribou had back in the Dragon Imperial Palace on Fishman Island. Whatever it was, it felt upset. Upset about the tree? Luffy stood up, dusted off his clothes, then bowed to the tree. Sorry about the tree. I'll be more careful. The upset feeling immediately vanished. Whatever the presence had been, it was satisfied with the apology. Not giving it another thought, Luffy stopped bowing and examined his surroundings. The trees really were big, and had shiny leaves. Now that he thought about it, the trees reminded him not just of Skypia, but the forest back on Mount Corvo. Maybe this jungle had big animals too? Luffy couldn't help but think that Ace would have loved this place. He brushed his fingers against the scar on his chest briefly, then leapt forward into the jungle. Well, since Ace wasn't here to see the jungle himself, Luffy would just have to do it for him. Yahoo! Luffy cried out as he swung from vine to vine. This jungle had everything: vines to swing on, trees to jump between, weird animals, and loads of different fruit trees he could snack on, so he didn't have to eat Sanji's bentos yet. He came to a stop on one of the thick tree branches. He could practically see the entire island from up here. There were cool rock formations in the distance and even a big lake. Maybe they could get some freshwater fish while they were here. Even if they didn't, the lake still looked pretty awesome from up in the tree, especially with it reflecting the red and gold sky. Wait. Red and gold sky? Luffy lifted the brim of his hat a little, to get a better view, and was given an extremely unexpected sight. The sun was hanging low on the horizon, and he could already see some stars in the sky. Luffy was dumbfounded. He hadn't noticed the sun was setting, nor had he realized he'd been gone for so long already. He thought it had only been about an hour, but clearly he was wrong. He had to get back to the sunny or he was going to miss dinner. Luffy jumped to the jungle floor, ready to dash back to the shore so he could get his dinner, only to come to a secondary realization. He had absolutely no idea where he was. Now the sun had completely set, casting the jungle into night. Luffy groaned. It was bad enough he was lost. Now it was too dark to find his way back. He was going to miss dinner at this rate. He glanced around the trees that surrounded him. There had to be something here that could help him get at least an idea as to where he was or where he should go. Kriak. Luffy turned his head toward the sudden creaking noise. To his left was now a clear path through the trees, and he was fairly certain that path hadn't been there before. This way? He asked aloud. Wind rustled the leaves in the trees. Luffy nodded. All right. This way it is. Luffy turned and ran down the path the trees made for him. As for what waited for him at the end of that path, only time would tell. Meanwhile, as Luffy took this mysterious trail through the jungle, a little girl ran from a red-eyed man and a mohawk lady. 2 swordsmen met near a fruit glade, and 3 pirates became living toys for a jelly-boned wild boy. What awaits Luffy at the end of his trail? Stay tuned. A.N. Sorry this one was short. 3D2Y, Luffy's adventure is going to be a bit slow going, I'm afraid. Hope you like what you read, though. 2. Chronicles of Lone Wolf Von No. 1, of 2, time. The year 1522 Alp, less than a month before the War of the Best. Location. Ripoff Bar, Grove 13, Sabaody Archipelago. 100, 000 Barris for 1 lousy mug of booze. Forget it, lady. Shikayaku, known as Shaki to her friends, exhaled cigarette smoke before crossing her arms and answering. Those are the prices here. You'll just have to accept it. The incredibly foolish bar patron stood up forcefully, knocking over his glass. There's no way I'm paying that much cash for that coffin varnish you call liquor. You're out of your mind. Shaki raised a manicured eyebrow. Are you saying you're not going to pay your tab? The drunk drew his sword and grinned menacingly. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. What you gonna do about it? Shaki shrugged and stubbed out her cigarette. Suit yourself. However, before the idiotic bar-goer could learn exactly what Shaki was gonna do about it, the sound of a gunshot rang through the bar. The man's eyes widened, then rolled into the back of his head as he fell face first onto the counter. Shaki blinked, then bent over and briefly examined the man she'd been about to beat into a pulp. A now empty tranquilizer dart was sticking out of the back of his neck. Another eventful day, Ms. Shikayaku. Shaki looked up and smiled. I don't recall asking for your help. The young man standing in her doorway smirked. He was a young man with very pale skin, cropped black hair, with an odd lightning bolt shape shaved into the left side, and dark red eyes. He also had a curved scar on his cheek. He wore an open magenta-colored leather jacket that only covered his upper torso, a red t-shirt that revealed his navel, gray cargo pants tucked into black combat boots, and black fingerless gloves. Around his neck was a gold medallion engraved with the image of Sideways Eye, and in the crook of his arm was a dark cloak. He also had a holster belt around his waist which held one gun, the other gun being in his hand. Shaki knew better than to feel threatened though. This man was not XP newcomer shrugged slipped the gun back into its holster. My mother always told me it was good manners to do things without being asked first. Since when do you care about manners, Enoch-chan? Shaki asked. Vaughn smirked. Since I entered the bar belonging to the scariest woman on Sabaody. Blood King, Enoch Vaughn solo bounty hunter on Sabaody Archipelago. Age, 25. Shaki's eyes followed Vaughn as he strolled up the counter, kicked the tranquilized customer to the ground, and took a seat. Flatterer. Vaughn shrugged again as he set down his cloak and the bag that had been slung over his shoulder. Hey, whatever works, right? Order something or get out, Shaki told him, her voice warmer than her words. Cheapest stuff you got then. Shaki giggled as she got out a clean glass and the cheapest alcohol in her stock, which wasn't cheap in the slightest. She poured Vaughn his drink and watched him take a few sips. "I haven't seen you around here lately," she said, cleaning up the glass the unconscious fool broke. "Is business good in Grove 3? "Nah, I was off the archipelago," Vaughn replied, draining his glass. "Owed a guy a favor on some island 3 days east of here. He wanted me to take care of a pirate problem he was having there, so I had to catch a ship heading in that direction. I just got back today." "A favor? What kind of favor? He didn't kill me." Shaki gave him a confused look. Vaughn darted his gaze to the side. "He has a daughter." "Ah," Shaki said with a nod, pouring him another glass. "In that case, you owe half the men in the Grand Line a favor." "Haha, you're hilarious." Shaki just smiled at him, tossing away the broken glass then lighting a fresh smoke. Vaughn downed his drink in one go, and slammed the glass down. "So, has Dark King come back yet? Last time I was here you said you hadn't seen him in 4 months, and that was more than a month ago." Shaki leaned on the counter, resting her chin in her palm. "Why? Do you plan to turn in his bounty?" Vaughn gave Shaki a horrified expression. "Are you kidding me? Do I look like I have a death wish? No, I just wanted to ask him something." "Is that something about that legendary island you're so interested in, Enoch-chan?" The temperature in the bar dropped 20 degrees in that instant. Shaki had obviously just brought up a very touchy subject. Vaughn's expression became guarded, and even annoyed. "I lost interest in that place years ago." "I sincerely doubt that. You spoke rather animatedly about it last time you were here. Once you had a few pints." Vaughn's eye twitched in irritation, then he looked away and began running his thumb over his medallion. "So what if it is? It's none of your business." Shaki gave him a knowing smile. "Of course it's not. A little less than a year from now, Vaughn would meet a certain mohawked woman who gave eerily similar knowing smiles, though hers were more smug. This would irritate him to no end." The red-eyed man glared at her, then exhaled loudly through his nose. He stood up, slapped a mess of bills next to his glass, and then put on his cloak. It was a fancy thing that had a high collar as well as a hood. The kanji symbol Kai, which meant blood go figure, was on the front in dark maroon script. "Thanks for the booze, Miss Shikayaku," he said stiffly. With that, he picked up his bag, pulled his hood over his head, and stalked out of the bar. Shaki gave an uncharacteristically weary sigh, carefully lifting Vaughn's money from the bar counter. She smiled. Once again, he'd overpaid. Vaughn speed walked through Grove 13, trying to keep his mind off the very touchy subject Shaki had dared to raise to the surface. Why did he have to be such a blabbermouth when drunk? He didn't like to think about it, let alone speak of it. "Look at you. How can you hope to find the island when you're such a wuss, brat?" Vaughn began to walk even faster. "Damn it, another dead end. Sigh, this is harder than Baron made it look. Any ideas?" He shook his head furiously. No, he had moved past this. He wasn't going to be dragged back into that nonsense. He shouldn't have even tried to seek out Rayleigh to ask about it. "I'm sorry. This is where my voyage ends, brat. It's up to you now. You're the only one left." Vaughn stopped walking and clutched his head. This had to end, now. "Shut the hell up, Banu!" Vaughn shouted to the heavens. He earned a few weird looks from those in the general vicinity. "Why is it you still piss me off even when you're long gone?" It took a lot to get Vaughn to blow his top, but Banu never had to show any effort to do so. That was one of things Vaughn always hated about him. Vaughn breathed heavily. Remembering the old troll's words, now of all times, was making him feel ill. He needed a distraction, any kind of distraction. A pirate attack, a marine coup, a flash mob, a smack. A news coup practically beaning him with the weekly newspaper. Vaughn hissed, rubbing the spot the newspaper hit. "You freaking rat with wings, watch where you're dropping those." The news coup had already flown off to deliver more papers, sparing it from Vaughn's wrath. The young bounty hunter scowled, but leaned over and picked the newspaper up. As he unfolded it he thought, well, I wanted a distraction. Numerous wanted posters tumbled from the newspaper. The headline jumped out at Vaughn with almost obnoxious intensity. Straw Hat Pirates Attack ENIES Lobby. Judicial Island completely destroyed in violent attack. Vaughn read the headline again, and then for a third time. "Listen, brat. The world government is nothing but a bunch of overconfident asses who like to inflate their own disproportional egos. I mean, look at that vanity project they call Eni's Lobby. Symbol of justice, my butt. It's an eyesore, that's what it is. I keep hoping some idiot pirate gets the guts to blow that place to kingdom come. Not like anyone will miss it. Some idiot pirate, huh? Vaughn muttered. For once, remembering Banu's words brought forth no ire or nausea. Then Vaughn did something unexpected, something he hadn't done in many years. He laughed. Vaughn sat down on the sticky ground, threw back his head, and had a nice, long laugh. His laugh wasn't anything special. It was as common as they come. But if you asked anyone who heard it that day what it was like, they would all tell you they had never heard a laugh sound so unbelievably relieved. It was as if everything had gone right in the world for the laugh's owner at that one moment. Vaughn did eventually stop laughing, and when he did, he scooped up the wanted posters he had previously let fall. After briefly leafing through them, was that a tanuki? And why make a poster for a guy who wore a mask? He came across the captain of the pirate crew the newspaper was blaming the entire incident on. He was so sure the government hadn't censored anything. Dorks. Straw Hat, Monkey D. Luffy, with a bounty set at 300 million berries. That figured. You'd have to be related to Old Man Garp to do something so insane. The Vice Admiral must have had a conniption when he heard. The fact that Garp had actually procreated wouldn't sink in until several hours later, causing Vaughn to choke on his dinner and get the Heimlich from a bystander. Vaughn tossed the wanted posters aside and flopped onto his back. He didn't even care he was getting resin all over his favorite cloak. The moment was just too perfect to be worried about trivial things like that. Smiling like an absolute fool, Vaughn put his arms behind his head and looked up into the leaves of the mangroves. Monkey D. Luffy and the Straw Hat Pirates. Now that was something worth looking into. And though he didn't know it then, Vaughn would get a look at these Straw Hats, and it would be sooner than he thought. Vaughn did say he saw Zoro's near-death experience with Kizaru. Stay tuned. A.N. Vaughn's going to become kind of important later on, so I added this look into his life 2 years ago. Quick spoiler, he's a HE subject for one of 2 flashback chapters for this story. Hey, this is One Piece. There has to be a flashback or 2. 3. Zoro Senpai time. Just after sunrise location. Campsite of the Luffy, eventual future Usopp, Roronoa's mystery girl if we happen to see her rescue team. Is the fire out? Nami asked, packing up the blanket Luffy had been lying on. Sanji stomped his foot down, sending a spray of dirt over the fire and snuffing it out. It is now, Nami my swan. Good. Then let's get going. Lysop looked around. One question. Which way do we go? Nami looked ready to answer, but then slumped over dejectedly. I'm not sure. I really couldn't get an idea of where we were going thanks to Arati and Vaughn. Just another reason to hate that red-eyed freak, Sanji chimed in. What about Arati? Chopper asked. You can hate her for me. She's the enemy, but I could never truly hate a woman as lovely as her. Cough hopeless cough case cough. Lysop faked coughed into his hand. Sanji threw the sniper a baleful glare, while the latter whistled innocently. Roronoa hitched, the still out cold, Luffy higher onto his back. He gestured his head to the side. I think we originally came from that direction, so we should go that way to start. Great idea, Sanji said, immediately walking in the opposite direction. This way, everyone. Hey, that's completely opposite of what I said, Roronoa pointed out. Yeah, like we're really taking directions from you, Mosshead, Sanji snorted. Oh, and that gives you the grounds to be the leader? Last time I checked, you aren't any more the navigator than I am, number 7. Why do you keep calling me that? Tony opened his mouth to respond, but Lysop put a hand on the reindeer's hat, shaking his head. There were just some things that were better left unexplained. Whatever, Sanji scowled. Point is, I may not be navigator, but there's a reason I'm a much better choice for helping Nami lead us out of this jungle, besides the obvious better sense of direction. Roronoa raised an eyebrow. Oh, and what's that? I'm the eldest in the crew at the moment, so it only makes sense. Are you still milking that? Nami said in exasperation. I'm a chef, Nami sweet, I never waste good milk. Roronoa grit his teeth. Newsflash, I'm older than you by 2 years. Only because you're from the future. Sanji reminded him. In reality, I got 8 months on you. Nami facepalmed. Not this again. Can't they give it a rest? Tony frowned in confusion. Give what a rest? Yeah, what's the deal? Lysop added curiously. Right before we arrived here on the island, we got into a discussion about our ages and learned Sanji is actually older than Zoro, Chopper explained. Oh yeah, I remember that. It was a few days before we arrived in Nanohana, Lysop said. He frowned and side-eyed the ginger navigator. I learned that Nami hadn't bothered to learn my age in all the time we sailed together. We were busy, it never came up. Nami attempted to defend herself. Tony ignored Lysop and Nami's brief tiff, giving his younger self a weird look. What are you talking about? Sanji isn't older than Zo, I mean, Roronoa. All conversation and bickering came to a sudden halt. Sanji slowly turned his head to look down at the future doctor. Well, yeah, right now, the cook admitted. Roronoa is from 2 years in the future, so naturally. No, I mean he's older than you in general, Tony interrupted. Roronoa gave Tony an expectant glance. He wanted to hear this. What are you talking about? Sanji asked anxiously. I'm 8 months older than Mosshead. I was born on March 2nd, and he was born on November 11th. Tony crossed his little arms. Sanji, I'm the ship's doctor. It's my job to know information like the whole crew's birth dates, or at least Nami made it my job after Robin joined. So, yeah, so? Nami echoed. Tony pointed a hoof at Sanji. Sanji was born March 2nd of 1505. He pointed at Roronoa. But Zoro was born November 11th of 1504. He's actually about 6 months older than you, Sanji. No one said a word after Tony finished his explanation. They just kept switching from staring at Tony, at Roronoa, and at a slack-jawed Sanji. So this entire time they'd been in awe for nothing. Zoro, the slightly taller and older-looking one, actually was the older one? Who would have thought? Several more minutes passed before anyone made the effort to break the silence. The pirate that finally did it was the swordsman in question, or at least his future self. That would have been nice to know 2 years ago. I've been continually presented with overwhelming evidence that Zoro is actually the older one, not Sanji. Rather than go back and change everything I'd already written, I wrote this instead. 4. The Trial of the Baba Siblings. Time. The year 1519 AOP. Location. The Royal Palace, Alubarna, Alabasta. Dear Vivi. Sorry I haven't written to you recently. The situation here in Yuba was starting to become troublesome. The recent dry spell has many rushing here to use the oasis, but it's under control, for now at least. My father says we need to be patient, but what is your father planning to? Vivi closed the letter and sighed. She finally gets a letter from Koza, and it's about the lack of rain. She should have guessed. It was just like him to be concerned about things like that. Nefertari Vivi, Princess of Alabasta Kingdom, age 13. Kuru, who was at her side as always, quacked softly and nudged her hand. This was his way of asking if she was all right. Vivi smiled and scratched the super-spotted billed duck's head. I'm fine, Kuru. I just want to hear about something besides this stupid dry spell. No, she didn't really think the dry spell was stupid. She was just frustrated. Alabasta was by no means a rainforest, and going for long periods without rain was completely normal. However, they'd never gone this long. It wasn't so long that her father was particularly worried, but long enough that everyone else was. There was even talk of it being the beginning of a drought. Honestly, it was ridiculous. It rained all the time in Alubarna, so there was no way it could be a full-on drought. She got up from her chair and walked outside onto her balcony. Kuru followed. She leaned on the railing. But still, her father did always say a king's duty was to his people, and they were her people too. If everyone was starting to get worried, she supposed looking into the matter couldn't hurt. Standing up straight, she decided she would go see if her father was busy, and if he wasn't, she would ask him about the possibilities of helping those affected by the dry spell. Vivi turned around, ready to do just that, when she heard shouting. Unhand me, you savage dog, a female voice shrieked. Yeah, unhand her. If she leaves, then she'll stop screaming in my ear, a male voice pleaded angrily. You cannot do this. We have rights, or better yet, let me go. I'm good either way. Would both of you be quiet? That voice she recognized. It was Chaka, surprisingly enough. Chaka never shouted like that. Vivi looked down from her balcony, and saw Chaka and Pell were dragging 2 people up the palace steps. Whoever it was they were dragging, they kept thrashing and giving her country's guardians a hard time. But all too soon, the group disappeared behind the front palace doors. Vivi raised an eyebrow, then shared a glance with Kuru. Both simply shrugged, but Vivi decided that maybe now wasn't the best time to bother her father. Igaram, King Nefertari Cobra said, sitting down on his throne, "Have Chaka and Pel returned yet?" Chaka and Pel. Igaram cleared his throat. Ma, Chaka and Pel have just returned, Your Majesty." He frowned sourly, as did the other soldiers who stood in the throne room. "With the people you asked them to retrieve." "Good, thank you. Please send them in." Igaram motioned for a guard to open the doors to the throne room. The doors swung open, and in came Pel and Chaka with their charges. Both wearing Agrid 2 zones tossed the man and woman they had been dragging forward. They landed in a heap at the foot of the steps to Cobra's throne. Pel had been dragging a short young woman in her late teens, early 20s, with violet hair in a long braid and messy bangs that fell into her jade-green eyes. A small round birthmark was just under the left eye. She wore an elaborate dancer girl outfit, foregoing shoes, with bangles around her ankles and wrists as well as other pieces of gold jewelry. She was also wearing metal chains and shackles, but those were obviously a new addition. Pel held in his hand a short staff with a notch cut in the top, a shikomizu sword, no doubt. Cobra had heard this woman was a skilled swordsman. Chaka's charge was a tall young man approximately the same age as the woman. He had short, wild violet hair that also fell into his green eyes. His birthmark was beneath his right eye. He wore a loose open shirt, short pants, a sash around his waist, and pointed slippers. He too had chains and shackles on his arms. Chaka wasn't holding any confiscated weapons, but if the rumors Cobra heard were true, the shackled man didn't need them. "How dare you treat a lady like this?" the woman snarled, entangling herself from the man and twisting into a sitting position. She glared fiercely at the 2 zones. "Did your mothers not teach you how to treat women properly? If I bruise, don't think I won't sue you guys for assault," the man barked. He easily contorted his body through his arms so that the limbs were in front instead of behind his back. He stood up and got in Chaka's face. "What gives you the right to hogtie us and throw us on the ground?" "I suppose that would be me, though I can say with candor that I did not expect them to put you in chains," Cobra spoke up. "I apologize, my lord," Pel said, "but when we went to fetch them, they were resistant, to put it mildly." Taking into account his and Chaka's disheveled appearances and their torn-up clothing, it was being put very mildly. Cobra nodded, understanding entirely. Fair enough. He turned his attention to the chained-up people in question. "Baba Yari, Baba Runo. Welcome to the royal palace." Baba Runo and Baba Yari, bounty hunting twins from Nanohana, in Alubarna on business. Ages: 20. The Baba twins ceased their outrage and froze with terrified expressions on their faces. Then, very slowly, they turned around. Through in Yari's case, it was more like she scooted around so that she was sitting facing the throne. "Holy crap!" the pair shouted at the same time. "Is that Cobra?" "You insolent rabble!" Igaram shouted. "Show some respect for your king." The twins ignored Igaram in favor of their own little panic attack. Yari shot to her feet and attempted to run out of the throne room with her brother, but Chaka and Pel grabbed them by their arms before they could make it too far. Runo and Yari kept running anyway, and the 2 head guards were actually having difficulty keeping their grip. The other soldiers in the throne room raised their weapons, but it proved unnecessary. Finally, Chaka and Pel were able to yank them back and throw them to the ground again. "Are you done?" Cobra asked calmly. Yari and Runo both sighed. "Yeah, we are." "In that case, Chaka, Pel, would you mind removing their bonds?" They reluctantly obliged. This allowed the siblings to stand up and rub their chafed wrists. "So, any reason why you sent your pet puppy and birdie to interrupt our noon meal?" Yari asked scathingly, straightening out her clothes. "It took us a long time to get reservations to that restaurant." "I actually don't mind that much, the food there sucked," Runo threw in, stretching his arms mostly in weird positions that made the other soldiers' stomachs roll. Yari shushed him. "Are you saying you're both unaware of the grievous crimes you have committed?" Igaram asked incredulously. "Good, now we're on the same page," Runo said cheerily. He crossed his arms and smirked. "Care to enlighten us?" A vein throbbed on Igaram's forehead, and in order to prevent his friend from suffering a massive aneurysm, Cobra saw it fit to intervene. Yari, Runo, roughly 2 days ago you both attempted to collect the bounty of pirate Captain Roche Thompson, and in the ensuing battle you caused a wide radius of destruction to Nanohana's port, Cobra said. He gave the twins a serious look he usually reserved for Vivi when she did something wrong. Do you recall this? Yari placed her hands on her hips. We did more than attempt. We succeeded. Roche is well on his way to impel down, but I digress. Is that the cause of all this fuss? In case you haven't noticed, causing disproportional collateral damage is kind of our shtick. Runo smirked mischievously. All purely accidental, of course. This time was different, Cobra said, his voice gaining a slightly icy quality. Along with the initial damage to the port, you also severely injured 138 people who were caught in the crossfire of your battle. Igaram finished for the king. Ma, you're lucky they're all still alive. The Hunter twins' eyes widened, but this occurred with brevity. The twins both quickly adopted near-identical deadpan expressions. Oh, that, they said listlessly. What do you mean, oh, that? Chaka, Pell, Igaram, and every other guard and throne room hollered in unison. This is about that, Runo continued, cleaning out his ear with his pinky. Geez. You had us worried for a moment there, Yari added, running her fingers through her bangs. I thought we had done something seriously wrong. How dare you? Igaram scolded, red-faced. You wounded over 100 people. Did your parents not at least try to teach you how to be decent human beings? As soon as he said this, Yari and Runo fell to their knees and hung their heads. An aura of negativity floated over them, adding to the overall miserable nature of their appearance. How did he know that? They asked themselves gloomily. Chaka and Pell both sweat dropped. These two were idiots. Igaram, that's enough, Cobra told his captain of the guard. There's a chance you're correct. In the time I knew him, I never took Baba Shard to be of the fatherly sort. From what my late wife told me when we visited Gobahara Badlands many years ago, he was more interested in the well-being of his village than his own children. Upon mention of their father, the emo cloud dissipated as Yari and Runo stiffened. It didn't last too long though. They then stood back up, oddly resigned looks gracing their features. But beneath this outward appearance of resignation lay burning fury. You could see it in their eyes. I strongly suggest you get to your point, Your Majesty, Yari said without emotion. You will find we are not the types who enjoy having their time wasted. While I cannot vouch for his skills as a parent, Shar was a leader who cared for his people, Cobra said. When you came on the scene as bounty hunters 2 years ago, this was a trait I hoped he had instilled in his children, at the very least. He closed his eyes. As king, my country is my people. This is the same for any ordinary man, and if a man hurts his people, where would he be? Could he truly still call this place his country? He opened his eyes. What about you two? You endangered the lives of your fellow citizens. Citizens you have been protecting by defeating pirates who enter our waters. Do you truly feel no remorse in how you've hurt your country in this way? The twins didn't answer for a very long time, but Cobra was in no rush. He wanted whatever they had to say to be well thought out, though he had no indication as to what they were thinking. Both siblings had lowered their gazes so their bangs blocked their eyes. You know, Cobra, I've just decided that you're not as good a judge of character as you think you are, Yari whispered at last, albeit with venom. Cobra raised an eyebrow. Was she saying he was wrong about them or their father? Whatever the case, Yari lifted her head. Her eyes were colder than ice. Runo's eyes has raised his gaze, but considerably less so than his sister. We feel no remorse for hurting those people because it is so obvious they got hurt because they were weak, Yari continued, planting one hand on her hip jauntily. Runo nodded sagely. Truer words have never been spoken. It's a harsh world beyond your palace walls, Cobra. Not that you'd know. You royal types are so above everything. You, Igaram began. Shut it, tubehead, we're still talking, Runo interrupted. Anyway, maybe we went overboard with Thompson, but pirate fights are a common occurrence in this day and age. If the people you keep rambling on about aren't strong enough to survive these, then the fact of the matter is that they're simply too weak to remain in this world. If anything, we're doing you a favor by weeding out the weaklings from the strong. In the entire time they'd known him, Igaram, Chaka, and Pell had never seen Cobra look so angry. The king's teeth were grit tightly, and his eyes had narrowed so far they were almost closed completely. Besides, in the long run, we defeated the pirate and your precious country is safe once more, Yari added. One of our dear father's favorite sayings was that you cannot make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. We have broken the eggs, so it's up to you, as king, to make the omelet. Silence returned to the throne room. No one had any idea how to respond to such heartless and causal words. No one, except for the man sitting in the throne in front of the speaker of those heartless words. It seems to me, the king said slowly, that it bothers the two of you that you live in what you call a weak country. To an extent, the twins replied with dual shrugs. When I heard of what the two of you had done, I was reluctant to consider throwing you in prison. Despite your obvious flaws, you have protected this country time and time again. However, now that I've heard your true feelings, I have a much more advantageous punishment for you. He stood up and pointed to the throne room doors. Baba Yari and Baba Runo, as of this day you are officially banished from Alabasta Kingdom. You are never to re-enter our borders for as long as you both may live. Whatever smug feelings the twins held vanished like a desert mirage. Yari's eyes bugged out and her jaw dropped, but no sound came from her mouth. Runo was much more vocal, as he was wont to be. Banished? The male bounty hunter cried out. You can't do that? He can, Pell corrected him. He's the king and you are one of the fools who hurt his people. Considering everything that has happened, you and your sister are getting off easy. We've lived here our entire lives, weak or not. This place is our home, Runo argued with the falcon. He turned back to Cobra. Please reconsider, your highness. How about me and Yari help fix all the damage we caused, and we'll pay for the victim's hospital bills. Then we can call it even. Cobra didn't take him up on his offer, only responding with a steely stare. The sentence was non-negotiable. We can't just leave. Runo choked out. Where are we supposed to? Runo, stop sniveling. It is pointless. Runo turned to his sister. Her face was hardened in barely contained rage. She immediately snatched Runo's wrist with one hand and her sword from Pell with the other. If we have to leave, I suppose now is as good a time as any, she said heatedly, tugging her brother towards the throne room doors. That annoying warlord has been beating us to many of the pirates as of late. Business had plummeted entirely. But Yari, Runo started to protest. This country is going under anyway, Yari continued, ignoring her brother. This is for the best. Wait, Cobra spoke up. Yari stopped walking and tugging. What are you talking about? Yari looked over her shoulder and gave Cobra a tight smile. Everyone knows this dry spell is more than just that. Seeds of unrest have been planted amongst your darling people, and it is only a matter of time before they bloom into a force that will bring you and this country down. It saddens me that I will not be here to see it. With that, Yari continued her hurried pace, dragging her protesting brother all the way and radiating sheer fury. As they came to the doors, Yari stopped for a moment. Out of nowhere, she raised her fist and punched the wall. The random action left a large crater in the solid stone wall. Goodbye, Cobra, she said without looking at the king. I would wish you luck, but that would make me a liar, would it not? The Baba twins exited the throne room, leaving behind the king and his men to consider her words. Neither party knew at the time just how accurate Yari's predictions would be. Banished, Runo yelled, throwing his arms up into the air as he paced the deck. I can't believe you got us banished. After leaving the royal palace, the royal army escorted them back to Nanohana. Once they returned to their home to pack their things, the army dropped them off at the first ship that was planning to depart. It happened to be a merchant ship that didn't mind 2 extra passengers. The captain of the ship stated he would gladly take Yari and Runo to the next island. Yari and Runo weren't happy about any of it at all. They were only on this ship because they had been freaking banished. Now what we supposed to do? Runo continued to complain and pace. Alabasta's the only home we've ever had. You just had to overdo it in that fight. I was perfectly restrained, but you. He did not banish us because we both overdid it, Yari snapped at him from where she leaned on the ship's railing. He banished us for simply living up to our dear father's philosophy. We are victims of Searstance, and if Cobra cannot comprehend that, then he is even more naive than he appears. And what is so wrong with that philosophy? You and I both know the world we live in has no room for the weak. Runo scoffed and sat down cross-legged. Clinging to our values isn't going to get us a new home, though. Maybe we do not need one. Many bounty hunters travel around without a permanent home. It is not unheard of that we do the same. She turned to face her brother. The pirates we captured in Alabasta were severely below our level of skill. I suggest we make our way through the Grand Line, continue to get stronger, and eventually arrive in a place where we will never be bothered by the likes of the weak ever again. Runo gave Yari a confused look. What are you talking about? Yari did not answer straight away. She first unsheathed her blade and held up her braid. With one quick, clean movement, she lopped off the length of hair and tossed it overboard, leaving her remaining hair looking like a rough pixie cut. Runo gaped. Had his vain sister just chopped off her hair without so much as a second thought? What crazy messed up universe had he just entered? Yari resheathed her sword and knelt down in front of Runo. She reached over and cupped his chin. Get ready, Runo. We are heading to the new world. I haven't done much characterization for Yari and Runo, so I felt it would help to give you some exposition into their past. Hope you enjoyed this. Cobra was really hard to write. 5. TRD Straw Hat Theater presents Monster Time. In the carefree monster village of Monstown, located the carefree monster forest, there are a wide variety of monsters who live together peacefully and, well, carefree. There have been the occasional arguments, mostly between the village's resident Minotaur and Kappa, but conflict is usually kept to the bare minimum. That is, until a day came where some newcomers decided to stir up trouble. It all began on a very special day in Monstown, or at least it was for a certain group of monsters. So, are we all aware of what the plan is? Stronami the mermaid asked, bouncing along the beach on her tail. Of course, Usapaka the centaur said, galloping next to her. He jerked his thumb to the packages strapped to his back. First, we go into town and buy all the finest quality meat I've already taken care of. The mermaid's eyes widened. What? How did you pay for it? I took care of it, Stronami my love, Sanzara the Kappa replied, one arm waving enthusiastically while the other held his legendary saucer to his head. He was running on her left. It completely cleared out my savings, but I'd do anything to ensure your plan is a success. Pervert Kappa, Zoromilk, the Minotaur who looked like a cow, muttered. He ran next to Usapaka. A difficult feat given he was still carrying all three of his legendary clubs. Sanzara glared at him. Shut up, Bessie, I didn't ask for your opinion. No fighting, Stronami ordered. We still need to go over the plan. Chopakin, please state the next phase. Chopakin, the massive kraken, swam in the water next to the beach in order to keep up with his friends. We're doing it right now. Buy the meat and make a mad dash for Lugiao's house. After which we will ask Lugiao to follow us to a specific location on the beach. Rodusa the Gorgon went on for the kraken. Super. A voice from above called out. Once he agrees, then I'll show off the super fireworks display I've been working on. Flying above the group on the beach was a strange blue creature that looked like a cross between a lion, an eagle, and a robot if his plane-like wings were any indication. He was also only wearing a speedo and sunglasses, for whatever reason. This strange, legendary beast is Frankistern, a griffin that joined Lugiao's circle of friends after the legendary Rodusa petrification incident. He lost his wings in an accident, and replaced them with mechanical ones of his own design. He is also a pervert. And I'll provide musical accompaniment, said the creature flying next to Frankistern. It was a glowing, ghostly thing that seemed to be formed out of smoke and light, vaguely resembling a skull. Together Frankistern and I will be a true experience for the eyes and ears. Though I have neither. Yo-ho-ho-ho. This is Brewillis, a will-o-wisp who happens to be an excellent musician. He was discovered by Lugiao in a foggy swamp in Monster Forest, and was invited to live in the village with him and his friends. Yosh, Stronami declared. Our plan is perfect. There is no way this can go wrong. You just jinxed it, Stronami, Zoromilk yelled at her. Don't yell at Stronami, Clover Breath, Sanzara yelled at the Minotaur. Cuber Brain. Hamburger, Saucer Face. The argument continued, but the rest of the group ignored them. It wasn't long before they reached Lugiao the dragon's house, which was built on top of a low cliff near the beach. This made it convenient for Chopakin, who couldn't leave the water but could at least look above the cliff. The monsters not in water crowded around Lugiao's front door, and Rodusa knocked. "Lugiao," they all called out. "Come on out, we have something for you." The door slammed open almost immediately, and the group was exposed to the sight of a very frantic Lugiao. "Guys, I'm glad you're here," Lugiao shouted. "I have a serious problem." There was no doubt about that. The first thing the dragon's friends noticed upon seeing him was that he was lacking a certain feature on his head. "EHHHHHH," they all shouted. "Your legendary horns are missing." "What? My legendary horns are missing?" Lugiao cried out in surprise. "How could you not notice? And what are you talking about then?" "My hat is gone. I was hoping you'd all help me find it," Lugiao moaned and fell to his knees. "First I lose my hat, and now my legendary horns. What a disaster." "It looks like those rumors I heard were true," Bruilis said, mostly to himself. "What rumors?" Usopaka asked. "Rumors of a group of monsters that steal legendary items from other monsters, then sell them to the highest bidder," Bruilis explained. "Though I don't know why they'd want Lugiao-san's hat. I'm going to guess they wanted his legendary horns, not his hat," Sanzara said. He lit a cigarette. "But Lugiao never lets anyone get close to his hat, much less his horns. When could they have gotten to him?" "I did take a nap outside earlier," Lugiao spoke up, getting back on his feet. "When I woke up, my hat was gone. Oh, and my legendary horns, I guess." Stronami, Usopaka, and Sanzara facepalmed. Leave it to Lugiao to think of his hat first and his horns second. "If these monsters steal legendary objects, do you think they're the ones who took Rodusa's legendary earrings a while back?" Zoromilk questioned. "We never did find them." "Oh yeah, you guys told me about that. Once she lost them you all worked your hardest to find her something even nicer." Frankistern burst into tears. "Wah! It's so beautiful. I love you guys. Wah!" "Are you crying, Frankistern?" Chopakin asked with concern. "Shut up, I'm not crying. You're crying, I am?" "Even if they didn't take Rodusa's legendary earrings, these thieves are probably the ones who took Lugiao's legendary horns," Stronami reasoned. "Bruilis, did the rumors you heard mention where we might find these creatures?" Bruilis nodded, or rather he did the will-o-wisp equivalent of nodding. "They do. These thieves supposedly have a home base in some ruins in the northern part of Monster Forest." "I know where that is," Rodusa announced. She turned to Chopakin. "Chopakin, stay here and see to Lugiao. We don't know what effect the loss of his horns will have on him. The rest of us will investigate the thieves." Chopakin saluted with one of his tentacles. Aye, Rodusa." The group quickly put away the meat Sanzara had bought, then left the Kraken and Dragon in order to investigate the thieves. Meanwhile, in the ancient carefree ruins of Carefree Monster Forest, a shady group has come to a meeting. "Yuhahaha, this is perfect," the first creature said. The creature was a female monster made of stone, with pointed ears and clawed fingers and toes. She had large bat-like wings, horns sticking out of her forehead, and a large red jewel in the middle of her brow. She also had a blonde mohawk, with the most normal thing about her. "The boss is going to flip for this," she went on. "We've finally found legendary dragon horns. This is the Gargoyle Notrarity. She is second lieutenant of the Carrianotrio treasure hunters. She is short-tempered and something of a whiner. Also, never imply she is older than the age she claims she is. You will regret it." "It is about time," another creature said, filing her long, sharp nails. "Boss was so adamant. He even said we were not to return until we had legendary dragon's horns." This creature had violet hair, green skin, and a warty nose. She wore a black Lolita dress, a pointy hat, and striped stockings. She also carried an elegant wand, which she was using as a nail file. "This is the third lieutenant of the treasure hunters, the evil witch Yariaga. She is a master of evil spells and magic, most of which end up backfiring on her. She likes to wear fancy dresses in hope they will keep others from noticing her nose. It doesn't work. The dude's got serious issues," Yariaga's companion said, performing a handstand. "I thought those legendary earrings we stole were good enough. Boss is just picky." This one appeared to be a young man with violet hair, but he was made up of stitched-up cloths. This interesting being is Rurindi, a living rag doll. He is not actually a monster, but rather a life-sized doll Yariaga brought to life with one of her spells. A move she later regretted. He's kind of annoying. Rurindi held up the horns, which were sitting inside a straw hat. I still can't believe how easy it was. I thought dragons were ferocious in holding on to their treasure. I always thought that too, Yariaga commented. I wonder why he did not react or awaken. HMMPH, the fourth member scoffed in the shadows. Probably because you guys are the first ones stupid enough to steal from a dragon. Nice to hear from you and your sunny disposition, Notrarity said, rolling her eyes. You helped steal it too, you know. Yariaga and Rurindi Sniceacher didn't reply. He was a pale young man with slicked back black hair, red eyes, and a scar on his cheek. He wore a black cloak. The first lieutenant and final member of this team is Count Vocula. He is not actually a count, or even a vampire. He is an ordinary man who looked so much like a bloodsucker he was sent to live in Monster Forest as a child. He has long since given up trying to convince his peers of otherwise. I have no interest in the legendary items we steal, Vocula finally said coolly. The only reason I joined you guys was that I hoped I could complete my own goals. How could you not be interested? We rake in a lot of income by selling legendary items, Notrarity asked. Vocula crossed his arms. In that case, why don't you sell your legendary forehead jewel, or Yariaga's legendary wand? That's a great idea. Rurindi agreed with zeal. No way, jerks, Yariaga and Notrarity hollered. And you do not get a say, Rurindi, Yariaga declared, pointing at her rag doll man. You are not even a real legendary creature. Neither is Vocula, Rurindi pointed out. The girls' eyes bugged out of their eyes as they turned to stare at their comrade. He's not, Notrarity gasped. Seriously? Yariaga added. Vocula slapped his forehead, then shouted angrily, what do you think I've been trying to tell you all these years? I knew all along, Rurindi said smugly. This led to a large argument amongst the four, mostly consisting of insults to each other's intelligence. They got so into it that they didn't even notice when a minotaur, mermaid, centaur, kappa, griffin, and will-o-wisp arrived at the ruins. Ahem. Stronami cleared her throat. Excuse me. The treasure thieves stopped arguing and turned to glare at the new arrivals. What? Zoromilk pointed one of his clubs at the horns and hat in Rurindi's hands. You stole our friend's legendary horns and we want them back, now. Forget it. Yariaga snapped. We stole these fair and square, go steal your own. If you won't give them back, we'll just have to take them back from you, Frankistern said, pounding his front feet together like fists. You're welcome to try, Notrarity said baring her fangs. All monsters on both sides took a battle stance, ready to fight for the legendary dragon horns and hat. It would have been an amazing battle if one Gorgon hadn't intervened. We don't have time for this, Rodusa sighed. With that, she removed her glasses and glared at the thieves. In the blink of an eye, literally, the thieves were turned to stone. All except Vocula, who covered his eyes in time. What the heck, Rodusa? Zoromilk protested. I wanted to fight them. As did I, Usapaka lied. He was sweating in fear, but was relieved. But a peaceful solution works for me as well. I'm with Usapaka and Rodusa, Stronami admitted. We have a timetable to keep. You're so wise, Stronami, Sanzara cooed. Frankistern whistled to get his friend's attention. Guys, hold up, the thieves aren't all down. The vampire hasn't been petrified, Bruillis added. Vocula uncovered his eyes. Rodusa had put her glasses back on, sighed at the sight of his comrades, then reached over and tossed both horns and hat to the group. Here, they're all yours. Rodusa caught the desired items, then gave Vocula a quizzical look. You're giving them up just like that, after all that trouble? Vocula shrugged. I only joined these guys because I was hoping to find a legend of my own. Somehow though, I think I'll do better by myself. He pointed to one of the ruined buildings. I'll be taking these dunces back to Carrianotrio. But if you're missing any other legendary objects, we keep the stuff we steal in there. See ya. Vocula dragged his 3 new statues away, leaving the group of friends to do as he said and checked the building. Inside they found a great expanse of legendary items from all sorts of different monsters. including Rhodus's missing earrings. The Gorgon was happy to see her treasure, and then suggested that before they returned to Lugiao, they should go back to Mondstaun and spread the word about this place. Everyone agreed. There was no reason not to. They had what they wanted. "Wow, this is amazing," Lugiao exclaimed upon arriving at the beach. "Thanks you guys." The beach was decorated with banners, streamers, and a feast of various cooked meats. Frankistern had his fireworks show underway, and Brewillis was rocking out on a guitar, despite not having any hands. Once they left the ruins and told their fellow Mondstaun citizens about the ruins, they had returned to Lugiao's house. The dragon had been ecstatic to get his horns back. Putting them back was an easy fix. Usopaka had been carrying super glue, but was even more ecstatic to have his hat returned. "You did all this for me?" the dragon asked. "Of course. Would we ever do anything less?" Usopaka said with pride. Lugiao cocked his head to one side. "Not that I don't appreciate it, but can I ask why?" His friends gaped, then laughed. It was just like him to forget something like this. They decided to remind him together. "Happy birthday, Lugiao." And so ends another day in Carefree Monster Village. The railing is a little loose, be careful when you lean on it. "I got it, Usopp bro. And try not to hammer the nails too hard, you might break the planks." "I know what I'm doing, Usopp bro, and don't forget." For crying out loud, Frankie shouted, turning his head to glare at the sniper. "Will you be quiet and just let me do my job?" Usopp reeled back from where he had been, looking over the cyborg's shoulder. There was no way he was going to anger the guy who single-handedly defeated all of Yari's men. In reeling back, he fell on his rear while shivering in terror. Frankie sighed and went back to hammering a new plank into the deck near the railing. "Sorry," I yelled, "but you forget that I'm the cruise shipwright. As long as it's me, Mary is in the best care in the world." Usopp nodded and gulped. "Right, sorry." Frankie turned his head again to offer Usopp a reassuring smile, then returned to work. After they had sailed their ships a reasonable enough distance away from where Vivi punched Yari, they weighed their anchors and finally took a much-needed breather. In that time, they decided to see to their collective wounds with supplies Frankie gathered from future Chopper's office. As Vivi stitched up Zoro's shoulder, much to the swordsman's protest, Frankie had joined the past Straw Hats on the Mary and demanded answers. Who was the blue-haired girl, who was the duck, and why did Zoro and Usopp act like they didn't know anything? Usopp and Brook took turns explaining everything that had happened, which took much longer than they would have thought. Throughout the entire story, Frankie remained silent, except for a few times where he had a question or started crying at something he found touching, all the while claiming he wasn't crying. Usopp had learned Frankie was kind of emotional. By the time they'd finished, Zoro was stitched up and bandaged, and nearly half an hour had passed. Similar to Brook, Frankie's final reaction was less than spectacular. "Luffy gets us into the weirdest crap, huh?" he had sighed, then turned to Vivi. "In any case, it's super great to meet you, princess. I never knew the crew once had royalty on board." Though she had tried to hide it, Usopp had noticed the way Vivi had clenched her hands at Frankie's exclamation. Vivi then tended to Usopp's jaw and other wounds, and once she finished, Frankie announced that now was as good a time as any to start working on the Mary, reminding them he promised to fix the damage caused by the fight with Yari. While Zoro and Vivi followed Brook back onto the Thousand Sunny, Usopp stayed behind to oversee Frankie's progress. He just watched at first, but it wasn't long before he started making suggestions. And obviously, Frankie didn't appreciate being told what to do where ships were concerned. Hammering the last board in place, Frankie nodded with satisfaction and stood up, striking his favorite pose. "Yow! Battle repairs complete and super, if I do say so myself. Told ya I knew what I was doing." Usopp got up and inspected the repairs Frankie had made. He had to admit, they were perfect. It was like Mary had never been damaged in Yari's attack at all. It made everything he had fixed for the Mary, from the mast to the figurehead, look shoddy in comparison. "It looks good," Usopp admitted, before crossing his arms proudly. "Though it's nothing compared to the fleet of galleons a faraway kingdom once asked me to repair for them." Frankie glanced at the metal plates bolted to the mast. "Something tells me if that's true, those ships sunk super quickly afterwards." "Shut up, jerk!" Usopp snapped at him. He placed one hand on Mary's mast. "Not that my own repairing skills aren't sufficient, but do you suppose you could?" I don't know, do something about the mast? Or the other damages around the Going Merry? You're a shipwright after all. The unspoken and I'm not was evident in Usopp's voice. Nonetheless, Frankie walked up to the mast, held up his hand, and a smaller hand popped out of the palm. He has a hand inside his hand, Usopp thought, awestruck. That's so cool. Frankie knocked the knuckles of his smaller hand gently against the metal plates. Not exactly stable. It's fine for a temporary repair, but it won't last forever. I'd say with a break like this, it'd be better to just replace the entire mast. Usopp scowled. Of all the inspiring things Luffy could have done for Laboon, why did snapping the mast off have to be part of it? He looked at Frankie expectantly. So, can you do that? I could, but it's not like I can just pull a new mast out of thin air, bro, Frankie said, retracting his second hand. I'd have to either buy one or carve a new one entirely. I doubt there's a shipyard anywhere on this island, and carving a mast would take days. We just don't have that kind of time. I mean, we still have to decide whether or not we want to go find Luffy and the others or wait for them to come to us. Sorry bro, but as much as I want to, further repairs are just going to have to take a backseat right now. Usopp deflated. Oh, okay, sorry I bothered you. Usopp tried to swallow his disappointment. He hoped this Frankie guy would join their crew soon in his time. The Going Merry could definitely use the TLC Frankie would provide. Frankie smiled and began packing up his tools, in his arms, of all places. Still, it's nice to be on board the Merry again. My time with her was pretty brief, but even then I could tell she was a work of art. Always has been, going off of what I've seen of her today. Brief? Usopp asked, curious. How brief are we talking here? A week, a month? A little less than a day. What? Scratch that. Frankie could wait as long as possible before he joined the crew. Frankie finished packing his tools and gave Usopp a sheepish look. Yeah, that wasn't a good week for any of us. To make a long story short, stuff happened and by the time I was able to sail on her she was beyond fixing. We laid her to rest and then I spent the next week building Sunny. Usopp's eyes widened, and he turned to look at the brigantine anchored next to the caravel's starboard side. You built this whole ship by yourself? What? Nah, I had help from Water 7's galley La Shipwrights, but the blueprints and design are completely mine. Frankie grinned widely at his ship. Carved from atom wood and built to my specifications, the Thousand Sunny is a dream ship meant to carry the king of the pirates across any sea. Usopp gazed up at the cyborg in wonder. He sounded so sure of himself and clearly had pride in his work, but he wasn't bragging. It was as if he were simply stating a fact. The kind of confidence reminded him of Luffy, and Usopp could tell their captain was where Frankie was getting it from. First Brook, now Frankie. Newer to the crew and very weird, but they both totally got it. He shouldn't have been surprised. Still, Usopp couldn't prevent the sadness that spread across his features. I don't doubt the Sunny's amazing. It's just I kind of hoped Merry would be the ship that carried us to the One Piece. Hey, listen bro, Luffy had to make a decision that was best for the whole crew, Frankie blurted out panically. He loved the Going Merry just as much as anyone, but she would have sunk if she kept sailing in that condition, he had to. Frankie, calm down, Usopp interrupted, gesturing the cyborg to take it down a notch. It's okay, I get it. The Going Merry was a gift from my friend Kaya. So I really wanted her gift to be the ship that carried us all to the end. But I guess the Grand Line is a rough place. If the weather or a sea king's not causing damage, something else is. It makes sense that we'd have say goodbye at some point. I'm sad that we're going to have let Merry go in the future, but we still have her now, so from this point on I'm going to make sure she lasts as long as possible. I couldn't call myself the great Captain Usopp if I let this obstacle keep me down. Usopp grinned at the cyborg to show just how fine he was. Frankie, on the other hand, looked at Usopp as if a word the sniper just said. Or at least that's what Usopp thought. It was kind of hard to tell with the sunglasses covering the cyborg's eyes. What's with the weird look? Usopp asked. Is there something wrong with what I said? No, there's nothing wrong, Frankie admitted. It's just you reacted super differently than I expected. How was I supposed to react then? Frankie looked extremely uncomfortable, and almost ashamed. Then again, I guess the circumstances are different than when Luffy told you about replacing Merry in the future. Frankie, how did I react in the future? Usopp insisted. I know Brook told you about Luffy's gag order, but you can tell me with the bare minimum of details, can't you? For a moment, Usopp thought Frankie wasn't going to say anything, but the cyborg finally sighed and stood up. I wasn't there for it, but you didn't take the news half as well as you're taking it now, Frankie told him. You and Luffy ended having a huge fight, and that's all you're getting out of me, brother. Usopp thought the new information over. A huge fight? That didn't give him much to work with. A huge fight could be interpreted any number of. You idiot, his captain whispered. You knew it would end like this. You knew you could never beat me. Usopp didn't reply. The last thing he remembered was the sound of Luffy's voice, sounding on the verge of tears. Usopp broke into a cold sweat. No, there was no way. He knew he told Vivi that had felt more like a memory than a dream, but there was no way. Usopp bro? You okay? Frankie asked with concern. You look like you're about to be sick. No, I'm okay. He turned away quickly from the cyborg. I'm going back on board the Sunny, are you coming? I was, but on second thought, it couldn't hurt give Mary a quick inspection, Frankie said. Maybe check to see if the keel is in good condition and stuff like that. Usopp thought checking the keel was a little random, but Frankie was the shipwright, so he guessed he knew best. The sniper walked up the gangplank connecting the two ships and stepped onto the Sunny's grassy deck. Who the heck put grass on a pirate ship, anyway? One of the first things he noticed was white steam pouring out of a hut-like structure at the stern. Hey, Frankie, Usopp called out. When the cyborg turned to look at him, he said, Where's that steam coming from? Is it supposed to do that? That's just the bathroom, Frankie called back. I told Princess Sis where it was in case she wanted to clean up, but that was 15 minutes ago. She must still be in there. Okay, thanks, no problem. Usopp was about to walk away, but stopped and once again shouted to Frankie. Hey, Frankie. That fight you said I'm going to have with Luffy, was it more like a duel? Frankie almost did a double take. What, how the heck did you know that? Usopp didn't answer, instead walking away from Sunny's railing morosely. Call it a hunch, he muttered to himself. Location, the bathroom, 1000 Sunny. Drip. 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 Vivi blankly watched the stray drops of water fall from the bathtub's faucet. The water covering her body was almost scalding hot, proven by how steamy the air was, but at this point, the princess barely registered pain so minimal. Look on the bright side, you have never been closer as a crew. How many pirates can say they have shared each other's pain? Vivi lifted her hand out of the bathwater, and gently ran her fingers over the cut on her neck. That woman. What are you doing here? Should you not be in Alabasta, preparing for this year's reverie? The newspaper did say your father was too ill to go this year. That horrible, awful woman. No matter how hard Vivi tried, Yari's venomous words kept echoing through her head. That snobby tone and condescending claims, how she took joy in the pain she caused. All were enough to make Vivi want to be sick. How could such a witch come out of Alabasta? Alabasta. How long had they been on Kala so far? It had to have been at least more than a day since the super current dragged the Mary here. A lot could have happened in that time. Vivi sunk into the bathwater until it came up to her chin. No, for once she wasn't worried about Alabasta in the now. Roronoa said the crew defeated Crocodile, and she didn't buy the changed history theory. Nami explained to her. There were just too many possible contradictions. Whether or not they stayed on this island, she had a feeling Luffy's defeat of Crocodile and the saving of her country wouldn't change. And she wasn't worried about her father's future illness as much as she thought she would be. That was a long ways off and she was positive her father was perfectly healthy in the present. Drip. 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 And though she knew she should be, she wasn't even worried about how close they had come to dying earlier. Mr. Frankie and Mr. Brook had come in at just the right moment and saved them. They were both powerful and clearly could handle any further threats they would encounter. Mr. Roronoa was with Nami, Sanji, and Chopper, and it wouldn't be long before they had Luffy with them. They would be fine too. So why did she still have this sick feeling in her stomach? Was it just an aftereffect from all the earlier pain? Or was it just Yari getting to her in another way by not letting her forget her stupid words? What was she doing? Should she not be in Alabasta? Why Alabasta? Didn't she belong on this ship just as much as the others? Now, where is all that brass you were showing off earlier? Easy pickings, boys, should you not be in Alabasta? Vivi, Kuru, what are you doing here? Last I checked, we left you in Alabasta? Arg! Vivi shouted in frustration, sitting up straight and hurling a bottle of body wash against the wall. The cap popped off upon impact, sending the citrusy-smelling goo within the bottle splattering everywhere. Vivi panted, observing the object that had received her wrath, then slumped back down into the water. What was wrong with her? Knock, knock. Vivi-san? Are you alright in there? You've been in there for a while, and I thought her to crash. Qua? Vivi sat up straight again. Oh, I'm fine, Mr. Brooke. I just dropped something. Alright, if you say so, Brooke said through the door. Anyway, I noticed your clothes were a little worse for wear, so Kuru-san and I took the liberty of procuring you some fresh ones. They're some of Nami-san's old clothes, so I think they'll fit you. Qua? Kuru added proudly. I also threw in some fresh bandages and gauze, just in case you need them. The wound on your neck isn't serious, but it wouldn't hurt to bandage that and the bruises on your back. Thank you very much, Mr. Brooke, Vivi called out. Yo-ho-ho-ho, no problem. The princess stepped out of the bath. Which she liked very much. It reminded her of the one in the royal palace, only smaller, and grabbed a bathrobe off a hook on the wall. It was fluffy and soft, smelling faintly of flower blossoms. She also noticed, with some distaste, the robe was meant for a woman with a much larger bust. Still, she tied it closed the best she could and approached the door leading out of the bathroom. She was about to turn the knob when something occurred to her. Mr. Brooke? Vivi spoke up. Did you go through Nami's closet or whatever to get those clothes? One of her chests actually, but yes, the skeleton replied. Any chance while going through them, did you stop to look at something else? Would you believe me if I said no? Vivi sighed. She liked Mr. Brooke, but he was hopeless. Leave the stuff with Kuru and go, please. Okay, I will, Brooke assured her. Are you sure you don't need help in there though? I'm sure. In that case, I'm off to find some fresh clothes for Usopp-san and Zoro-san, bye. A minute later, Vivi opened the door a crack and peered through. Mr. Brooke was gone, but Kuru stood there with a pile of medical supplies and clothes on his back. Qua, Kuru said, saluting her. Vivi opened the door's feathers, then let the duck inside. Once she had shut the door, she examined the clothes Mr. Brooke had brought, praying that they weren't too revealing. Fortunately, the outfit wasn't bad. It was simply a pair of jean shorts, a belt, and a cute yellow t-shirt decorated with orange flower designs. For a perverted skeleton, Mr. Brooke certainly had a keen eye. Or would it be more accurate to say Nami had good taste? She guessed it didn't matter. Vivi first bandaged her wounds with aid from a surprisingly helpful Kuru, then quickly changed into the new outfit. Mr. Brooke had been right. They did fit her pretty well. After that she slipped on her shoes and pulled back her hair, then stepped out of the bathroom and into the little space adjacent, which held a sink and the trapdoor leading below. Vivi turned to Kuru. The library is directly below us, right? I wasn't really paying attention before. Kuru nodded. Vivi opened the trapdoor and carefully moved down the ladder. Kuru opted to jump down rather than try to climb the darned thing again. After they had their feet on the ground, Vivi looked around. The library was almost completely circular, with numerous shelves of books and a bench encircling the whole room. Windows were positioned at various spots around the room, letting light flood in. In the middle of the room was a mapping desk Vivi assumed belonged to Nami, as well as a hexagon-shaped table that emerged from the floor that was surrounded by chairs. Vivi made her way over to the desk, which held a half-finished map that was labeled Fishman Island. Next to the map was a book with "Ship's Log" written on the cover. Vivi picked the log up, debating whether or not looking at it would break Luffy's gag order. She decided it did and put it down. Maybe a quick peek wouldn't hurt. She picked the log up again and opened it to a random page. That narcissist actually thought I would want to come with him to Endless Verth, or whatever he called it. That was the last thing I wanted to do, but considering he had taken out Zoro, Robin, Gonfall, and Wiper so easily, I didn't want to risk what would happen if I refused him. I could only hope Luffy would show up soon and get me out of this. Luckily, he arrived just in time. I later asked him how he and Isa got out of that snake, and he said. Vivi snapped the book shut. She wasn't so curious anymore, and Karoo kept shooting her disapproving looks. The princess placed the log in the desk's drawer, then continued to explore the room. She approached the bookshelves and began scanning the titles. Modern Cartography for Advanced Use. 101 Tales of Daring Feats and Heroes. The Barton Guide to Incurable Diseases. Introduction to Devil Fruits and Their Abilities. Vivi actually flipped this one open and found that one page in particular, the page on the clear fruit, was dog-eared and well-read. Sailing and Ship Almanac for the Experienced Shipwright. The Great Symphonies of Amadeus Rowe III, Swordcare Quarterly. The Culture of the Lost Civilization of Remina. Vivi could guess just by the titles which books probably belonged to which Straw Hats. It appeared everyone had their own shelf dedicated to books of their interest. The only person who didn't appear to have one was Luffy, but then again, Vivi never took the Rubberman as much of a reader. As she further perused the shelf that held books on navigation and weather patterns, she came across something that didn't belong there. It was a polished wooden box with a simple clasp on the lid. Vivi removed the box from the shelf, undid the clasp, and opened it. Within its confines, sitting in a bed of velvet, was an eternal pose. An eternal pose? Vivi asked herself, holding the pose up to the light. Like Nami's log pose. The needle spun aimlessly. Why would they have something like this locked away in a box? Qua, Karoo announced suddenly, gesturing his wing to the eternal pose's other side. Vivi turned the pose in her hand and read the pose's label. Alabasta. This was the same eternal pose Sanji had stolen from the Unluckies. The crew still had it after more than 2 years? Vivi wasn't sure why, but she smiled softly, and if anyone else had seen that smile, they would have seen the hint of relief it contained, and held the pose close. Then she carefully placed the item back in its box and put it back on the shelf. Vivi moved to another shelf, selected a book, and sat down on the bench that ran the surface of the room. Karoo curled up at the princess's feet, and the latter serenely started to read. Location. Men's quarters, 1000 Sunny, Zoro-san. What are you doing in here? Zoro turned his head from where he sat at the room's kotatsu. Brook stood in the doorway, looking at the younger swordsman with an air of confusion. I thought you were resting in the infirmary, the skeleton went on. Yari-san really put you through the ringer. That was obvious even if he hadn't been around to see it. Zoro was covered in bandages, especially on his shoulder, and was still wearing the same blood-stained clothes from earlier. He was also still shirtless from when Yari tore his shirt in half. Though how the green Haramaki remained unscathed was a mystery all its own. He had yet to even remove his bandana, which was strange. Yeah, I know. I was there, Zoro replied in deadpan. He turned away. I was looking for where Roronoa kept his weights, but found myself in here. Typical Zoro-san, Brook thought. I don't think you should be training with the condition you're in. Worry about yourself. What are you doing in here anyway? Brook walked over to the lockers. I came in here to find fresh clothes for you and Usopp-san, but since you're already in here, I suppose you could find something for yourself. Your locker is here on my left. As Brook looked through Usopp's locker, he realized Zoro hadn't gotten up to look through his own. The musician turned and saw Zoro was still sitting in the exact same spot, only now he was staring at the wall. Or more specifically, he was staring at the wanted posters pinned to the wall. Oh, so you've noticed those, huh? Brook walked over to the younger man. I don't think Luffy-san wanted you to know about those just yet, but I guess it can't be helped now. Zoro didn't respond, but his glance did dart briefly between Brook and the poster on the wall bearing the skeleton's name. Oh, yes, that's what I looked like when I was still alive, Brook explained cheerfully. Yo-ho-ho-ho, I was quite the handsome devil. Not that being boned doesn't have a certain aesthetic appeal, or at least that's what Robin-san told me. The younger swordsman still didn't reply, and now Brook realized he was reading the amounts written on the posters. He twitched slightly when he read Luffy's, most likely wondering what the heck Luffy had done to be given a bounty that size. Brook chuckled. I have to say, when I first joined the crew I was surprised at how large many of your bounties were. In my day anything over 50 million was almost unheard of. Bounties like Nami-san's were much more common, and amounts like mine, Frankie-san, and Usopp-san's were a little out of the ordinary. Why is Usopp wearing a mask in his? Zoro said at last. That's a long story, and I'm pretty sure Usopp-san embellished the details when he told it to me. Cook's poster isn't here. Every time we try to hang it up, Sanji-san burns it. While his bounty is quite high, the picture the Marines used for it isn't the best and Sanji-san despises it with a passion. Zoro snorted briefly before regaining his serious demeanor. Brook sincerely hoped Zoro's next inquiry wasn't about why none of Poster's pictures were current. He didn't want to have to explain that one or lie about it. "Brook, tell me something," Zoro said in a soft, but firm, tone. "How did Roronoa lose his eye?" "Why do you want to know that?" Brook cocked his head to the side as he thought about it. "Wait, are you thinking about what Yari-san said?" So one has to wonder, what does he pee next few years that causes you build a pain tolerance so high that you barely even feel it anymore? I do not know, but I bet it was excruciating. Maybe it involves why you are a Cyclops in the future. Just answer the question. I'm afraid I don't know. We never asked Roronoa-san and he hasn't offered up any information, so we respect his decision to remain silent. But I can assure you, Luffy had nothing to do with it despite what Yari-san may have implied. I already knew that Witch was full of crap, don't worry, Zoro assured him. Like Vivi said, Luffy would never do anything that would explicitly put the crew in danger he didn't think we could handle. I was just wondering if the eye had to do with other things. Like what? Her comment about pain tolerance. Zoro's silence was answer enough. Brook began to walk back to the lockers. I can only think of one situation where you were in enough pain to build such a high tolerance, and it's something I greatly respect you for. That got a solid reaction from Zoro. He looked up abruptly with a mildly stunned expression. You shouldn't dwell too much on the past or future, Brook said, pulling a shirt and shorts out of Usopp's locker. It will only magnify your fears, worries, and regrets. This in turn can drive you out of your mind, even if the brain your mind was housed and rotted away many years ago. Look to the future for your goals and to the past for inspiration, but do not let these consume your thoughts. Zoro said nothing as Brook finished speaking and closed the locker door. Well then, I should get these clothes to Usopp-san. The blood-stained outfit he has on now is an eyesore, Brook said cheerfully. Not that I have eyes anymore to get sore. Yo-ho-ho-ho. He pointed to one of the lockers. That one is yours if you want to get change. See you later. Zoro silently watched the skeleton waltz out of the room, and once the door had closed, he sighed and removed his bandana. He did not get that skeleton. He could go from goofy to serious to goofy again at the drop of a hat. And he respected Zoro for a situation where he was put through extreme pain. The gaze of a man who had been cracked in several places and welded back together. A man who had not quite been broken, but came pretty close. Zoro knew the eyes of a broken man when he saw them, and he could tell how close his future self had come even with the loss of one eye. What had almost broken him, and why would that warrant respect? He also had a gut feeling Luffy was involved. Did it have to do with the guilty looks Roronoa and Brook kept shooting Luffy in the beginning? Did he fail Luffy in some way and received agony for it? Luffy wouldn't have inflicted it, he wasn't like other pirates he'd faced over the years. Even then, why the respect, and how was Brook a part of it? Zoro tiredly rubbed his temples. Perhaps he was overthinking it, which was something he rarely did. The swordsman had never concerned himself with the future beyond defeating Mihawk and completing his promises to Kuina and, more recently, to Luffy. But for the first time in his life, he wanted to know what he was in for. Unfortunately, he couldn't get the answers he wanted without deliberately disobeying Luffy's orders about the future. He had nearly disobeyed them now when he asked Brook about Roronoa's eye. The best he could hope for was that someone would slip up and reveal something. In the meantime, he would be patient, and if at the end he learned nothing, that would be that. But he would find out what the deal was with the Love Cook's poster. That was a given. Zoro got up from the kotatsu, retied his bandana around his arm, and moved over the locker Brook had pointed to. He might as well get changed while he was in here. Time: 25 minutes after sunrise. Location: Galley, Thousand Sunny. I called you all here because we have a super important decision to make, Frankie said, sitting at the head of the table. We need to choose our next course of action. We can't just stay anchored here forever. Once he'd finished his quick inspection of the Going Merry, Frankie had used the intercom to call all hands to the Sunny's galley for an emergency meeting. Vivi came with Karoo from the library, while Zoro arrived looking rather grouchy as he had just discovered the observatory's gym when the cyborg called. Brook came with Usopp, the former claiming he found the latter all the way down in the soldier dock bay. Usopp had apparently been doing some exploring. Frankie quickly berated him about messing around down there and then started the meeting. It was noticed that the past versions of the crew had received wardrobe changes. Vivi was in the clothes Brook brought her, of course, but the men had new ones as well. Usopp now wore a pair of cargo shorts and a green t-shirt with a black skull and crossbones on it. Zoro wore the usual dark pants tucked into his boots and his haramaki, but now also had on a mustard yellow short-sleeved jacket with the zipper left open, clearly showing that he had foregone wearing a shirt underneath. Brook hadn't changed his clothes, but he now carried a fish-shaped guitar as opposed to the violin he had before. He strummed it gently as Frankie spoke. "I have narrowed down our choices to two possible options," Frankie went on. "Either we stash the Sunny and Mary somewhere safe and go out looking for young Luffy and company, or we stash Sunny and Mary somewhere safe and wait for them to come to us. It sounds like either way we're going to need to find somewhere safe to hide our ships," Vivi reasoned. "We can't risk leaving them out in the open. I recall that Yari wanted to confiscate Mary before." "Yeah, but only because Roronoa chopped up her group's galleon back on the beach," Usopp pointed out despairingly. "I should have known that was going to come back to bite us." He glared at Zoro. "Dang it, Zoro. Why do you have to be so impulsive?" "Hey, I wasn't the one who cut it up. That was Roronoa," Zoro argued. Even if he had been the one to do it personally, he wouldn't have regretted it. Those cronies had it coming. "Same difference," Usopp scolded him. "Stop forgetting that you two are the same person." Zoro snarled, stood up, and slammed his palms against the table. "He may be me from another time, but we are not the same person." Usopp was taken aback. What was with the sudden rage? "Take it easy, guys," Vivi broke in. "Now is not the time to fight amongst ourselves." "Qua," Karoo quacked in agreement. "Princess Sis is right," Frankie also agreed. "It's going to be kind of hard to fight the enemy if we're fighting each other, you know." Usopp and Zoro glared at each, but the sniper looked away testily while the swordsman sat back down. "Thank you, Mr. Frankie," Vivi said. "But do you mind not referring to me as Princess? Just Vivi is fine." Frankie gave her a thumbs up. "Vivi sis it is then." "No, I said just," the princess sighed and cut herself off. "Never mind. Vivi sis is fine too." "May I see your panties, Vivi sis?" Brook asked happily. "No, bonk. Yo-ho-ho-ho, how harsh, Vivi-san. You sure know how to make a rejection," Brook said, rubbing the new bump on his skull. Not that was anything there to swell. He started to play a lively tune on his guitar. "Rejection. Rejection. Always faced with Vivi-san's rejection." Usopp gave a Brook a weary look. "You're such a pervert." "Somebody talking about me?" Frankie announced proudly. Zoro slammed his fist into the cyborg's head. "Pervert is not a compliment." This action only served to create more silliness and shouting. It was at least another minute before the group calmed down enough to continue formulating a plan as to what they were going to do next. "If the issue of finding a hiding place is first on the agenda, I think I know a spot," Frankie said. "Right before I beat that jelly-boned freak, I found this huge cove in the side of a cliff that should be able to hold both Mary and Sunny. It's not too far from here actually." "I've been meaning to ask you something, Frankie-san," Brook spoke up. How did Frankie raised an eyebrow? "What do you mean?" "Back during the fight on the Lamb-chan, I overheard Yari-san mumble something about telling Runo-san about hypnotism with music as a medium. Therefore, this gives me reason to believe that Runo-san is the hypnotist we've been dreading to meet." "You mean this Runo is the one who hypnotized Tattoos into killing himself?" Vivi gasped. "Precisely, Vivi-san." Usopp slumped and groaned. "I think I just came down with if I fight a hypnotist I'll die disease." "Stop belly aching, Usopp," Zoro said gruffly. "Frankie said he already beat him, remember?" Usopp straightened up. "I'm cured. Now that you mention it, I think he did try some weird hypnotism stuff. He had a watch and everything." Frankie waved his large hand nonchalantly. "I broke the watch, and then he tried to attack me head-on. The punk was barely stronger than he looked, so I super kicked his ass and that's all she wrote." Usopp and Karoo looked at Frankie as if he were a figure to be venerated. Zoro just rolled his eyes, and Vivi smiled at Frankie's enthusiasm. In that case, congratulations on defeating one of our adversaries all by yourself, Frankie-san, Brook congratulated. I'm glad we don't have to worry about a frightening hypnotist anymore. I always found hypnotism to be very creepy. Like you're one to talk about being creepy, Zoro said with a sweat drop. And didn't you use hypnotism with music back on the Merry? Brook either ignored him or didn't notice the accusation. In any case, this cove sounds like our best bet, Vivi said while petting Karoo. Usopp crossed his arms and nodded. I agree fully, and once we got Merry and Sunny set, then we can decide whether to stay or go. Personally, I think we should wait for Luffy and the others to come to us. But what if they don't come? Brook asked. What if they decide to look for the rest of my crew? And we're left there in the cove all alone, just waiting to be ambushed. On second thought, let's hold off deciding on what to do until we get there, Usopp declared, rectifying his previous statement. Perfect, that settles it, now there's only one thing left to do. Frankie stood up from his seat and turned to Usopp. Usopp bro, I need you to do me a favor. A favor? Usopp repeated. What kind of favor? Press my nose for 3 seconds. Why? Just trust me on this. Usopp shrugged and stood, balancing on his toes so he could reach the cyborg's nose. Frankie leaned over a little to make it easier for the younger man. Usopp reached up and pressed Frankie's nose like a button. 3, 2, 1. Boing! Frankie's buzz cut burst into a blue shark fin hairdo. Usopp tumbled backward in surprise, as did Karoo. Hair came out. Usopp shouted. Qua qua qua, Karoo quacked, assumably the same thing but in duck language. Yow! What do you think? Frankie asked energetically. I'm feeling especially nostalgic this week, so I thought I'd wear the hairdo I had back when I first met you guys. It looks good, Frankie-san. Brook complimented the shipwright. Next you should try an afro. Awesome! Usopp yelled with excitement. He got back on his feet. How is it physically possible to be this amazing? Karoo bobbed his head enthusiastically. Qua qua. I'm more than just amazing, brother. Frankie leaned to the side and put his arms together. I'm super, per Frankie. Super. Usopp echoed, striking the same pose. Karoo attempted to do the pose as well. Qua. Zoro facepalmed, but you could see the faintest shadow of a smile on his lips. Brook and Vivi both laughed at the cyborg, sniper, and duck's antics. What else would you expect from members of the Straw Hats, past or future? Location. Unknown. Any word yet? Yes. The lookouts all say they see both of the Straw Hats ships approaching. Excellent. Now you can all just sit back and watch the magic happen. They're not here yet, moron. Your oh-so-perfect plan still might not succeed. Oh, ye have so little faith. Come guys, trust me on this. When have I ever let you down? There was that time on Zol K. Rhetorical, vampire boy. I'm not a vampire. Just keeping sitting there and looking pretty. I don't need you, accidentally, releasing the captives once we have them in our grasp. Humph. Humphs are for camels. Shut your sister up, Dancing Haze. Never call me that. Now, all of you shut up, they'll be here any minute. Time. 35 minutes after sunrise location. Just outside of the secret cove, in Kala's northwestern sector. As Frankie had predicted, it hadn't taken long to sail the ships to the cove he had told them about, or more accurately the Sunny sailed there while towing the Merry behind her. Fortunately, there had been a favorable wind blowing in the direction they needed to go. See, what did I tell ya? Frankie shouted from Sunny's helm. This cove is perfect for stashing Sunny and Merry. Usopp stood with Brook at Sunny's bow, right next to the figurehead. My goodness, it's enormous, Brook observed. It looks like you could fit a giant in there, Usopp added. From what they could see, the entrance to the cove was a massive hole in the side of a cliff and was bordered on both sides by thin stretches of beach. It was large enough and wide enough to easily let two of Sunny pass through. Craggy rocks stood around the entrance, giving it an eerie appearance despite the bright sunshine. I had no idea the island would even have cliffs this size, Usopp admitted as they sailed closer. I guess it gets more mountainous the farther north you go. Though I'd hate to fall from such a high cliff, Brook said grimly. I would easily break my back. Oh wait. I don't have a proper back anymore, yo ho ho ho. But you'd still break your spinal column, Usopp pointed out dryly. Brook stopped laughing. Don't be so morbid, Usopp-san. I'm supposed to be replacing Robin-san in the dark comments department. Stop making me afraid of meeting this Robin lady. Oi, Usopp bro, Frankie called out. You and Brook hop back on the Mary and take the helm. I need you two to navigate the old girl past those rocks, got it? Got it, the young man and skeleton replied. They stepped away from the figurehead and left to do just that. While that exchange occurred between those three, Vivi, Zoro, and Karoo stood vigilantly next to the Sunny's railing. They watched as the ship approached the mouth of the cove. Big trees, big cove, Vivi rattled off. She giggled. This place is starting to give Little Garden a run for its money. Who knows, maybe we'll meet a warrior giant in there as well. Zoro didn't comment. In fact, it appeared he hadn't heard Vivi speak at all. His brow was furrowed, as if in deep thought. Mr. Bushido, did you hear me? Vivi raised a finger to poke his good shoulder. Mr. Bushi. Zoro caught Vivi's hand before she could poke him, and shot her a quick glare. He raised a finger to his lips to shush her and motioned for her to crouch down, doing so himself right after. Vivi crouched down, as did Karoo when he saw what his mistress was doing, and whispered, "Is there a problem, Mr. Bushido?" "There might be," Zoro replied sternly. "I've been thinking about Frankie's story. Something about it doesn't make sense." "Oh, like what?" "Like what he told us about Runo. For a tough New World bounty hunter, he sure sounded like a weakling. Yari, however, said she was only the 5th strongest in the group. Wouldn't that make Runo stronger than her if he was one of the top members?" Neither of them needed a reminder as to how powerful Yari had been. "The rumors I heard about the Baba twins in Alabasta did hail Runo as the stronger of the two," Vivi confessed. "Physically, anyway. That doesn't mean Mr. Frankie couldn't have still beaten him. Without getting a scratch on that paint job of his." "Doubtful." Zoro leaned forward. "That brings me to another thing. Remember when Yari said how she should thank your father for banishing her?" "Yes. What of it?" "She said that if they had never been banished, then they would have never gotten's eyes widened. Runo has devil fruit abilities too." Zoro nodded. "Exactly. I didn't hear Frankie say anything about devil fruits or fighting style or any type of useful information in his story, did you?" Vivi shook her head. "No, now that you've pointed it out, I suppose his story was rather vague." She started to stand up. "I'll go ask him." Zoro yanked her back down. "Don't even think about it. What are you? Don't let Frankie know we're on to him." Zoro scolded her in a harsh whisper. "Let's just see how this plays out, okay?" Vivi reluctantly nodded, and Zoro let Karoo help the blue-haired girl stand. Vivi returned to looking over the railing, but Zoro instead made his way over to Frankie by the helm. "What's up, Zoro?" Frankie greeted cordially. "What were you and Vivi sis talking about all secret like just now?" "None of your business," Zoro told him coolly. "You two aren't a thing, are you?" "Hell no. The Thousand Sunny and Going Merry, thanks to Frankie's guidance and Brook and Usopp's steering, were able to clear the rocks with minimal difficulty." The inside of the cove was as equally impressive as the outside. Inside it was more like a dark, huge cavern, with sheer rock faces and stalactites and stalagmites. Erosion had carved natural walkways and paths along the walls. There was even a decent-sized beach on the inside that would disappear with high tide. If the tides even worked normally with the weird night-per-day thing that was going on. On the far end of the cove's beach was an opening in the rock, most likely leading into a tunnel to the outside. The water was deep enough that they didn't have to pull in the ships too far. They dropped their respective anchors when Frankie announced it was okay to do so. Zoro had to jump over to Mary to help Usopp and Brook drop Mary's anchor, but it was an easy job for him. Soon everyone gathered back up on the Sunny's main deck and took in the sight around them. Zoro whistled. "Have to admit, this is a decent hiding spot." "Isn't it?" Frankie crossed his arms, looking around. "I didn't think it'd come in handy so soon though." "Handy indeed," Brook agreed. "Now that we're here, I suppose we should decide whether or not we're staying here or going after Luffy-san and the others." "It would make more sense to go after them," Vivi pointed out. "They wouldn't know how far we've sailed since we split up." "But the jungle's filled with bounty hunters who want to kill us," Usopp argued in a dejected tone. Or worse, something else is waiting there to kill us. The bounty hunters won't kill us, Brook said in a sensible manner. That would drop our bounty's value. Don't say stuff like that so casually, Brook. Just filling my role as the temporary Robin-san. What is wrong with this woman? I say we go after Luffy, Zoro said. As Brook pointed out earlier, there's no telling what he and everyone else will do out there. We could be here for hours waiting for them to show up. How's about we vote? Frankie suggested. He raised one hand. I vote we stay. I'd rather we didn't leave the ships alone, hiding place or not. I vote we go. Sitting here doing nothing won't help anything, Zoro voted. Brook raised his hand. I vote we go look for Luffy-san as well. I vote we go, Vivi said, raising her hand. I vote we stay, Usopp yelled as he lifted his hand. I'm not going to risk going to prison when Luffy can take care of himself, and has Roronoa and Sanji to back him up. And I also vote you stay, because it makes things easier for us. Before the Straw Hats could look up at the owner of the foreign voice, blinding lights flared to life around the cove. This left the Straw Hats blinded for a few seconds until the spots in their vision cleared. When the spots did clear, the crew almost wished they hadn't. Along the natural walkways and cliffs stood the very same bounty hunter lackeys they had defeated earlier. All had some form of bandage on their bodies and all were clearly wounded, but what they lacked in intimidating appearance they made up for in the sheer anger they radiated. And big weapons. Every single one of them held a very, very big gun, and every single one of those guns were aimed at the Straw Hats. There was a simultaneous clicking sound as gun barrels were cocked. On the largest cliff, which hung over the cove's beach, stood 4 people, 2 men and 2 women. Only one of the women was familiar and undoubtedly pissed off Yari. The lead man, who bore a strong resemblance to Yari, turned to the other man. And you said the flood lamp dials were overkill. Only because Yari said it first, the other man, who had blood-red eyes, replied. The Straw Hats ignored this brief conversation, instead focusing on the fact the woman who had caused them so much pain was back on her feet. Holy crap, she's back, Usopp hollered, pointing at Yari. That didn't take long, Vivi said in shock. I guess it was too much to hope that she drowned, Zoro muttered. Yari snarled and stepped forward, ready to unsheath her sword. The lead man put his arm out in front of her, however, to stop her from her impulsive action. He gave the pirates below a friendly smile. Please pardon my manners. I haven't introduced myself, have I? He placed one hand on his chest. My name's Runo, I'm Yari's big brother, Blondie's name is Arati, and the vampire is Vaughn. The other 2 people looked to be in just as much as bad mood as Yari was, and Runo's nicknames for them didn't seem to help. Why weren't they in a good mood? For starters, Yari wasn't in a good mood because she had been beaten by a skeleton, punched in the face by a princess, wounded, humiliated, and forced to use bandages as a shirt because they weren't going back to camp until later. Vaughn wasn't in a good mood due to having given Yari mouth-to-mouth earlier and being told to sit and look pretty, so no more accidents would occur when the Straw Hats arrived. Arati wasn't in a good mood because, okay, she didn't really have a reason. Arati was always in a bad mood. The only person who wasn't about bite anyone's head off was Runo, and his unusually cheery attitude was grating on everyone else's nerves. Runo, Vivi exclaimed. Baba Runo? Runo bowed, as if he were a gentleman. It's a pleasure to meet you, Princess Vivi. You're just as beautiful as Queen Titi. Vivi knew she shouldn't let herself be flattered, but she couldn't stop the faint blush that spread across her cheeks. Zoro turned angrily towards Frankie. So what was that about you kicking his ass? 'Cause he doesn't look like he's had his ass kicked recently? You know, I don't think Usopp-san will appreciate being replaced as the liar, Brook added, sounding disappointed in the cyborg. Hey, Usopp protested. Their accusations went unheard by the shipwright. Frankie just emotionlessly stared at the feral-looking man standing above. Sorry, but I'm afraid the news of my defeat may have been a tad bit exaggerated. Runo apologized with near-genuine sympathy. He clucked his tongue. And now look at you, you've fallen right into my trap. He shrugged. And here I thought the overall low IQ of your crew was just a rumor. Hey, shut up, the Straw Hats collectively protested. If your idea of a trap is a cheap ambush, then you've got a lot to learn, Zoro shouted, gripping Kitetsu. We're not afraid of taking you on, even if you're from the New World. Yeah, what he said, Usopp shouted, though he was shaking from fear. Yeesh, I thought blind confidence was only Straw Hat's thing, Vaughn observed. It looks like it extends to his entire crew. Figures. Usopp and Brook stared at Vaughn for a second, before both screaming, vampire, scary. I am not a vampire. Vaughn hollered in aggravation, a vein pulsing violently on his forehead. He pointed at Brook. And you have no room to talk, Soul King. Arati burst out laughing. You ha 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 ha. Every single damn time. Vaughn, you poor jerk, you ha 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 ha. Please excuse Vaughn's temper, Yari said flatly, speaking at last. It has shortened somewhat since our captain. You fought Luffy? Usopp asked worriedly. Vaughn went from angry to calm in the blink of an eye. Yeah, and the concern in your voice is well placed. Straw Hat wasn't looking his best when I last saw him. The deliberate taunt in his tone aroused anger within the Straw Hats, as well as concern. Did that mean Luffy was? Relax, we don't have him in custody, Arati said to them. She whacked Vaughn upside the head. This idiot let him get away. The Straw Hats relaxed, but only a little. Vaughn rubbed his head and glared at Arati. Didn't I already apologize for that? No, oh. In that case, I am sincerely sorry. No you're not. Don't apologize unless you mean it, Enoch. Enough, Zoro interrupted. He drew Kitetsu. Did you come here to talk or collect our bounties? Vaughn smirked at the pirate hunter. Straw Hat said the exact same thing back in the jungle. Then you know like Luffy-san, we will not surrender so easily, Brook said, unsheathing Soul Solid. Your trap isn't going to stop us from taking you all down, Vivi shouted, drawing her peacock slashers. We beat your lackeys before, and we can do it again. Runo looked around the cove in mock surprise. Oh, you think all this is the trap? He chuckled. The expendable lackeys and the guns aren't the trap. Usopp visibly paled, holding his slingshot. It's not? No, it's not. This is. Runo snapped his fingers. Cyborg Frankie, the intermission is over. Please gather the cast. All of a sudden, Brook, Vivi, Zoro, Usopp and Karoo were all gathered into Frankie's arms from behind. The unexpected action caused them all to drop their respective weapons. The shipwright locked his hands together, effectively caging them in his embrace. And the tightness of that embrace was making it difficult to breathe. What the hell? Zoro shouted. Mr. Frankie, what are you doing? Vivi asked pleadingly, gasping for breath. Qua, Karoo added. He's crushing us, Frankie. What is wrong with you? Usopp cried out. Frankie stood there, grim-faced and quiet. His Nakamas's shouts were not reaching him, a fact that was pleasing Runo greatly, if his grin was any indication. Brook didn't yell anything specific beyond making distressed shouts. One of his arms was actually free and flailed about. The musician's bony limb got close to Frankie's face, knocking off the latter's sunglasses. Everyone, Brook shouted. Look at Frankie-san's eyes. They did, seeing as struggling against Frankie's arms wasn't doing anything, and saw that his eyes were blank and glassy, just like tattoos had been right before he shot himself. His eyes, he's in a trance, Zoro thought. Ah, the eyes, always a dead giveaway, Runo sighed. He grinned ferally. By now I assume you've figured it out. Frankie is under my control. But when did you? Usopp started to ask. He wasn't lying when he said I attacked him on that lion ship, Runo explained. The only false thing about that report was him winning. In reality he lost. Badly I might add, and has been in a trance ever since. How is that possible? Usopp hollered, sound more mad than afraid now. Frankie, he. For crying out loud. Will you be quiet and just let me do my job? He was so lively. I was, but on second thought, it couldn't hurt give Mary a quick inspection. And considerate. I'm feeling especially nostalgic this week, so I thought I'd wear the hairdo I had back when I first met you guys. Usopp gritted his teeth. He acted nothing like someone under a feral freak's mind control. It's not possible. Oh come off it, Runo scoffed. He ran a hand through his bangs. Do you have any idea how painfully simple it is to hypnotize someone into acting like they're not hypnotized? All I had to do was plant a post-hypnotic suggestion telling him to act normal until I gave him the right command. That same suggestion told him to give that bogus escape story and lead you to this cove at any cost. You accepted him into your stronghold and he brought about your destruction. He threw back his head, covered his eyes with one hand, and chuckled sadistically. He was my very own Trojan horse, and the poor sap doesn't even know it. I'd hate to be him when he wakes up. Shut up, Usopp screeched, tearing up a little. Let him go. Make me, Longnose. I have no obligation to listen to you. Don't think I've forgotten all the stress your future self has caused me. The violet-haired man continued chuckling for a solid minute, effectively weirding out every occupant of the cove. Except Yari, she was used to it. It was so lucky for me that I happened upon him, Runo went on. He lowered his head and slid his hand down his face. I had just lost my new reindeer Teddy. Any child hates losing a toy, but also like any child, I easily acquired a new one to make myself feel better. I got myself a brand new toy robot. Von side glanced Arati and spun his finger around his ear, the universal sign for cuckoo. Arati nodded in agreement. And it was so easy too, thanks to the hypno fruit I ate. Runo tapped the air, creating a quick splash of color. Any part my being, my voice, my movements. These colors I weave can be used to entrance new toys to be put at my disposal. Who knows, maybe Boss Carrion will let me make you my toys before we turn you in. Yari still wants her princess doll. Yari smiled at her brother. Runo was definitely related to Yari. Every word out of his mouth only served to fan the flames of their fury. The most irritating part about it was that it was evident that he knew he was angering them. He simply didn't care and even thought it was fun. It was fun to refer to their comrade as a toy. There was also the implication he had Chopper, the future one, at least under his thrall. Thankfully, his claims also said the little doctor had escaped somehow, but the fact the hypnotist even got close to Chopper fanned the flames even hotter. Zoro grunted as he shot Runo a stare filled with promises of death. Anyone mind if I slash this guy to ribbons? I'll gladly aid you, if we can get out of Frankie-san's grasp, Brook offered. It's getting hard to breath, though I have no lungs. Save the jokes for later, Mr. Brook, Vivi scolded him, then coughed. Runo clearly didn't see their threats as threats, for he was now cockily going on about something that had nothing to do with the situation. I knew my plan would work. This calls for celebratory food. Runo turned around to face the other three. Vaughn, give me my bento. Vaughn crossed his arms. I don't have it. What do you mean you don't have it? I gave it to Straw Hat. Why? Because I know for a fact you rigged that coin toss. What? Seriously? You're mad about that? Arati asked skeptically. But right after you made that face fault, you said you didn't care that you had to watch the brat. You said you were going to volunteer anyway. Vaughn shrugged. It's the principle of the thing. Vivi took advantage of the bounty hunter's inane argument to start formulating a plan. They had to get out of Frankie's grip, then they could escape. But how to make him let go? That was when Vivi noticed what part of Frankie's body her foot was close to and mentally groaned. She really didn't want to do that, but she saw no other way. Boys, get ready to run, she whispered. Eh? The boys muttered in confusion. Forgive me, Mr. Frankie. It's nothing personal, Vivi thought, raising her leg as high as it could with the position she was in. I just hope he still feels it even while in a trance. Before anyone could realize what she was doing, Vivi swiftly brought her leg down and rammed her foot into a part of Frankie's anatomy that had been viciously abused on at least one other occasion. The hypnotized shipwright gave a cry that sounded like a wounded piglet and immediately dropped the captive pirates, princess, and duck, presumably to cover the body part that needed more attention. He never had the chance to, for Zoro planted a kick in Frankie's chest that sent the cyborg flying into the Sui, not be the swirly cook, but even Zoro knew how to land a decent kick. The now freed pirates bent down, scooped up their dropped weapons, and began running across the Sunny's deck towards the figurehead. One by one they climbed to the top of the Lion Sunflower and jumped off, landing on the beach. Once they were all off, they made a break for the exit in the back of the cove. Not that I'm not grateful, but how could you do that, Vivi? Usopp demanded to know from the princess. You never kick a man there? I sympathize with Frankie-san, though I no longer have any of that to be kicked myself, Brook said in an oddly sorrowful tone. TMI, Brook, I'm sorry, but I didn't see you guys thinking of anything. It got him to let go at least. Vivi sighed and returned her focus to the exit ahead. Never mind. Let's focus on getting out of here before they come after us. They're not coming after us, Zoro muttered. Usopp, Brook, and Vivi turned to look at him. Zoro gestured up the cliff where Runo and the others resided. As he said, they weren't coming after them, as were none of the lackeys. They were done arguing and aware that they had escaped Frankie. They just weren't doing anything about it. They had gone through all the trouble of trapping them, so why weren't they trying to prevent their escape? They escaped your toy robot. Now what, Master Planner? Arati asked sarcastically. Frankie's strong, but he can be kind of a weakling, Runo said. Luckily, I planned for every contingency. You lot don't even need to lift a finger. He snapped his fingers. The Straw Hats were only a few feet away from the exit, when suddenly their path was engulfed with fire. The pirates skidded to a halt and stumbled backward to avoid the inferno. Whoa! Zoro shouted. What the? Zoro was then kicked in the gut and sent flying into his friends, which as a result sent them all tumbling back a couple yards. It happened so fast they never saw the assailant. Mr. Bushido! Vivi cried out worriedly, entangling herself from Brook. Are you okay? Where in the Four Blues did that fire come from? Usopp wondered aloud, voicing everyone's thoughts. Brook helped Zoro stand and gently prodded his chest. I think you may have bruised a rib or two, Zoro-san. Zoro knocked his hand away and panted, I'm fine. I don't know what the deal is with the fire, but I'd recognize that bastard's kick anywhere. Bastard? Vivi echoed. You left too soon, an empty, deep voice said. From the flames emerged a figure. It was a fairly tall and muscular man in his early 20s, wearing a fine black suit that had gold buttons, black tie, polished dress shoes, and a golden-yellow dress shirt. He had messy blonde hair that fell in front of his right eye, a trimmed black goatee, and the beginnings of a mustache. His only visible eye was as glassy as Frankie's. What caught the past Straw Hat's attention was what was above his eye. His eyebrow, which curled downward. They only knew of one man with eyebrows like that. Sanji? Vivi gasped. No, he looks different, Usopp pointed out. That must be future Sanji. You're right. That is future Sanji-san, Brook confirmed. Runo-san must have gotten to him. Zoro raised his own eyebrow. Cook's other eyebrow swirls down. How does that work? The others glared at him hard. That was hardly the point here. Sanji removed a cigarette from his pocket and lit it on the flames behind him. He took a drag, then said, Playtime's not over. You can't leave yet. His voice was bland, cold, and almost mechanical. The hypnotized Cook suddenly leapt forward and ran towards the group ahead of him. Zoro was the first to retaliate. He drew all three swords and dashed towards the Cook, ready to counterattack at any moment. Zoro-san, wait, don't fight him, Brook called out. Remember what happened when Sanji challenged your older self? Usopp added desperately. Zoro remembered perfectly well. He could feel the strength this Sanji had back when he kicked him. But in the long run, Brook, the only future Straw Hat here not hypnotized, would be needed to take on the bounty hunters. He could at least hold off the Love Cook. Once the swordsman and chef got close to each other, Sanji rapidly spun in place and kicked out his leg. Zoro lifted Yubashiri and Kitetsu to guard. It was a standard block he had used many times against Sanji in the past. Only in the past, Sanji's foot wasn't freaking on fire. What the hell? Zoro hollered. The Cook's foot glowed bright red with heat and crackled with flames. The metal of his own swords were beginning to glow as well for the transfer of heat. What the did Sanji eat a devil fruit? Vivi asked Brook. No, he heated up his leg with that spinning from before, Brook answered. It's his most devastating technique. Sanji pushed off of the katana. Skywalk. The entranced chef leapt into the air, using Zoro's swords as a launching pad, and stayed there. The Cook was literally walking on air until he was directly above his target. Which was not the green-haired man. Arati hummed. That's new. Sanji Lolly couldn't do that before. I thought no one outside of CP9 were supposed to know Rokushiki, Yari said mockingly. Arati scowled. Put a sock in it. That's just what CP9 wants you to think. She paused. Hey, wait, how do you know about CP9? I have connections. Sanji, Vivi cried out. He's going to attack us first, Usopp realized in panic. Karoo moved in front of Vivi, and Brook took out Soul Solid, the sword already becoming coated in frost. Diable Hambi. Sanji whispered so softly, they just barely heard it. His other leg ignited. Poele a Friar. Spectre. Seconds before the attack made contact, a thick mass shoved into the Brook and the others, pushing them out of range. Dumbass Cook. The moss-haired mass shouted, "Your fight is with me." It was an almost depressing thought, but Zoro never stood a chance. There was no conceivable chance he could dodge, so he raised his swords up to deflect Sanji's attack in any way he could. But it was futile. The chef repeatedly kicked his flaming limbs down in a fiery onslaught of power. All kicks hit Zoro and tore up the ground beneath him. Soon there was so much dust and smoke that you couldn't even see the swordsman anymore. Zoro! Usopp screamed. Mr. Bushido! Vivi shrieked. Vivi, Usopp, and Karoo both attempted to rush to the swordsman's side, but Brook grabbed them by the backs of their shirts before they could. Stop! It's no use, he yelled at them, his voice filled with regret. Don't let his sacrifice be in vain. The air around the attack site seemed to explode, and then it all stopped. Sanji allowed himself to fall back to the ground and land on his feet. He took another drag as the smoke cleared. The past Straw Hats were almost afraid to see. With good reason. The smoke cleared to reveal that Zoro, miraculously, was still standing. That was the only good news. The man was charred all over. Smoke rose generously from his body, and the crew could smell burning flesh from where they stood. Zoro's new clothes were remarkably still in one piece, but Roronoa wasn't to be happy about all the burn marks. He must have been in unbelievable pain, but he still stood with a death grip, and the Straw Hats dearly hoped that expression was still just an expression in this situation, on all three swords. His eyes were even still open, though all that was visible were the whites of his eyeballs. Sanji slowly walked over to the swordsman and lightly tapped his chest. Zoro crumpled to the ground, and the bounty hunters standing on the walkways around the cove all cheered with triumph. Sanji looked up, his eyes still glassy and unfeeling. Who wants to play next? Tears ran down Vivi's cheeks. This wasn't happening. Everything was supposed to be getting better. They had found the Sunny, the shipwright, and had time to rest. Why couldn't they have noticed that Frankie was hypnotized sooner? They could have avoided this. Karoo, sensing her distress, nuzzled her leg. Vivi fell to her neck's neck. She wanted this to end. She wanted to get back on the Mary and sail to Alabasta. Facing Crocodile was preferable to having to suffer through this. While Vivi was having a breakdown, Usopp was having a wholly different, and uncharacteristic, reaction. That bastard, Usopp whispered. Tears exploded from his eyes. That damn bastard, how could he do this? The sniper turned on his heel and drew back the cord of his slingshot, aiming the ammunition at Runo. The latter had yet to even notice. If I take him out, Usopp thought, then his devil fruit powers will deactivate and Sanji and Frankie will return to normal. We can save Zoro and get out of here. Put that away, Usopp-san, Brook said, placing a bony hand around the sniper's wrist. It won't do any good. I don't care, Usopp snapped, turning to glare at the skeleton. Did you see what he made Sanji do to Zoro? He needs to. Usopp froze when he saw Brook's face. The elder pirate may not have been able to show real expressions, but this was the grimmest and most dark Usopp had ever seen him. There was no trace of the cheerful skeleton who made corny jokes and asked perverted questions. You attack him, and he and the other three will join in the fight, he said with reprimand. He alone took down Frankie-san. What hope do you have? Usopp grit his teeth, but lowered his slingshot. Brook visibly brightened. Besides, I've seen Zoro-san take more damage than that and survive, so I'm sure he'll be just fine. The old musician became serious again. Now, I have come to the conclusion that only one of us will be able to escape. It's the job of the other two to ensure that that person makes it to the exit. Do you understand, Usopp-san? Usopp could easily tell who Brook was referring to, and for once, he didn't wish he was the escapee. He understood the only person who could easily escape was the one who had nothing to offer the bounty hunters. Brook calmly stepped over to the person in question, Vivi-san. Vivi looked up from where she had her face buried into Karoo's neck. What is it, Mr. Brook? Please forgive us for what we're about to do, he said, placing his hands on her shoulders. "Forgive you for now, Usopp-san." The sniper and musician grabbed Vivi and did what was possibly the stupidest idea in the history of stupid ideas. They threw her towards Sanji. Vivi screamed, then grunted when she bounced to the ground. The whole while she thought, what were they thinking? She quickly stood up and found herself nose to nose with Sanji. "Oh crap," she whispered. Upon seeing where Vivi had landed, Usopp shook Brook by his shirt. "What the heck, Brook? I thought we were saving Vivi, not dooming her." "We are saving her," Brook said through the shaking. "Just watch." Vivi went rigid, preparing herself for whatever fiery oblivion Runo was going to make him do to her. Sanji stared at Vivi, and without so much as another thought, walked past her. Vivi blinked. "Huh? Why didn't he take her down?" Runo shouted in frustration. "His orders are to take down all of the Straw Hats." "Speaking of taking guys down, Pirate Hunter's still alive, right?" Bon asked. "Of course he is. It's faint, but I know you can hear his inner voice." "That doesn't matter." Runo gestured angrily at the chef. "Why the heck isn't he listening to me anymore?" "That's an easy one," Arati said. "Sanji Lolly doesn't fight women. It's so against his code of honor he'd rather die than strike a lady. I think the skeleton knows that and wants the princess to escape. My hypnosis blocks codes and crap like that," Runo argued. "He should still attack her." Arati shrugged. "There are just some things you can't force men to do, even with hypnosis." Yari nodded sagely. "Amen to that." The two-woman fist bumped, which was almost as surprising to Yari's twin as Sanji's inability to kick Vivi in a this-should-never-happen kind of way. "You got a plan for this contingency, Master Planner?" Bond said snarkily. Runo sighed and squeezed the bridge of his nose. "Okay. Let's forget the princess for now. Sanji has done enough, so Yari, your new favorite dolly is up." Yari clapped excitedly. This was going to be good. "So thus I knew Sanji-san would never attack Vivi-san," Brook finished explaining. "What if that hadn't worked?" Usopp scolded him. "Then Vivi-san would have died. Stop trying to be this Robin woman." Karoo rapidly ran past Brook and Usopp, as well as the steadily approaching future Sanji. Sanji apparently had no interest in fighting ducks either. "Mr. Brook, Usopp, what's going on?" Vivi shouted. "Why'd you throw me?" "Vivi-san, get out of here and find Luffy-san. We'll hold off the bounty hunters and Sanji-san," Brook ordered her, taking a battle stance. "But, you need to get away, Vivi," Usopp cut in. "Understand? You have to get away. You're the only one without a bounty in the future. They have no reason to capture you beyond making you a doll, so run." Vivi tried to protest further, but Karoo made it to her and threw her onto his back before she could utter a single word. The pair ran off into the tunnel, the darkness swallowing them up as they moved out of sight. As the two ran off, Runo called out, "Go ahead and run, Princess Weakling. That's all you're good for anyway." "Be quiet, you jelly-boned freak," Usopp shouted, remembering what Frankie had called him earlier. "Pirates in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, long-nosed freak." Brook sighed with relief, then returned to his defensive position. Sanji was getting closer. "Focus, Usopp-san," Brook commanded, interrupting Usopp's argument with Runo. "Allow me to deal with Sanji-san. We'll leave the hunters on the walls to you." Usopp was terrified, but he swallowed and nodded, aiming his slingshot high. Sanji got closer and closer, when out of nowhere, he stopped. Brook raised an eyebrow, or he would have if he had eyebrows. Why was Sanji stopping? Had Runo called off the attack and was going to make him go after Vivi? BB Brook?" Usopp stuttered out, and pointed to the cove ceiling. Brook looked up. Floating through the air were black bubbles that gave off random charges of electricity. The bubbles popped when they touched the thundercloud overhead that was forming at an alarming rate. Brook went dry-mouthed, if it were even possible for the skeleton to be even more dry-mouthed than he already was. "Usopp-san? Why yeah, Brook. Brace yourself. WY? This is going to hurt. Location: the cove tunnel." Vivi figured she was halfway through the tunnel when she heard the screams. "Arg hhhhhhhh." The princess yanked on Karoo's reins. "Stop, we had to go back, they need us." Karoo shook his head and kept running. "Qua qua qua qua. I said stop. Why do you always do the exact opposite of what I tell you?" Qua qua. Is that a tone you're using with me? Vivi kept tugging and pull on Karu's reins, but the duck wouldn't budge. She was seriously considering just jumping off when Runo's words came back to her. Go ahead and run, princess weakling. That's all you're good for anyway. Vivi's hands went slack, as did the reins. Runo was right. Running was all she could do. She had held her own as Miss Wednesday, but these people were on a complete other level than the thugs she had to deal with over the last 2 years. She couldn't help Usopp and Mr. Brook even if she tried. Taking a deep breath, she snapped Karu's reins. Forward, Karu. We need to find Luffy. Despite the bravery in her words, tears streamed down her cheeks like waterfalls. These would not stop, not even after she finally found Luffy. For the look on Luffy's face when she tells him of what the sniper and musician told her to do breaks her heart. Next time. Chapter 17. Sunday's child is full of grace, but Wednesday's child wants to kick in her face. Frankie looked extremely uncomfortable, and almost ashamed. Then again, I guess the circumstances are different than when Luffy told you about replacing Mary in the future. When Usopp was told of Mary's condition had been robbed, beaten, and made to look completely useless. Here, he's just trying to take the future as he learns. Not to mention he doesn't know about Mary's Cloudbotterman. Different circumstances, different reactions. It was simply a pair of jean shorts, a belt, and a cute yellow t-shirt decorated with orange flower designs. This was the outfit Nami wore on Sabaody the first time around. Why would she still have it 2 years later? Despite the incident she wore it in, it was a pretty cute outfit. Edit. One of my reviewers asked a good question. Why did the past crew have to borrow clothes from the Sunny when they could have just gone back to the Mary? Well, in all honesty that did not occur to me. Let's just say for now that Brook was trying to be polite and Usopp, Vivi, and Zoro didn't really care by that point where the clothes came from. They had their own issues and worries to occupy their thoughts, so where they got new clothes didn't really matter to them. Despite inconsistency, that same reviewer said it was a nice touch, so I won't change a thing. Introduction to Devil Fruits and their abilities. Vivi actually flipped this one open and found that one page in particular, the page on the clear fruit, was dog-eared and well-read. This book obviously belongs to Sanji, if you recall his encounter with Absalom during the Thriller Bark arc. This was the same eternal pose Sanji had stolen from the Unluckies. The crew still had it after more than 2 years? This is a headcanon I have. Of course the Straw Hats would hold on to it, they would want to be able to find their way back to their friend. I can only think of one situation where you were in enough pain to build such a high tolerance, and it's something I greatly respect you for. Thriller Bark, Kuma, Pain Bubble. Nuff said. You shouldn't dwell too much on the past or future, Brook said, pulling a shirt and swords out of Usopp's locker. It will only magnify your fears, worries, and regrets. This in turn can drive you out of your mind, even if the brain your mind was housed in rotted away many years ago. Look to the future for your goals and to the past for inspiration, but do not let these consume your thoughts. Brook was on that ship, alone, for 50 years. Something tells me he had a lot of time to think, and his past decisions and future possibilities were some of the stuff he thought of. Could he have saved his crew? Would Laboon recognize him? That kind of thinking over a long period of time would drive anyone batty. Usopp now wore a pair of cargo shorts and a green t-shirt with a black skull and crossbones on it. Zoro wore the usual dark pants tucked into his boots and his haramaki, but now also had on a mustard yellow short-sleeved jacket with the zipper left open, clearly showing that he had foregone wearing a shirt underneath. Usopp's shirt is what he wore in Brand New World, and Zoro's shirt is what he wore in the Enies Lobby arc. Any word yet? Yes. The lookouts all say they see both of the Straw Hats ship approaching. Excellent. Now you can all just sit back and watch the magic happen. They're not here yet, moron. Your oh-so-perfect plan still might not succeed. Oh, ye of so little faith. Come guys, trust me on this. When have I ever let you down? There was that time on Zol K, rhetorical, vampire boy. I'm not a vampire, just keeping sitting there and looking pretty. I don't need you, accidentally, releasing the captives once we have them in our grasp. Humph. Humphs are for camels. Shut your sister up, Dancing Haze. Never call me that. Now, all of you shut up, they'll be here any minute. In the order of what's being spoken, the speakers are, Runo, Yari, Runo, Arati, Runo, Von, Runo, Von, Runo, Von, Yari, Arati, and Runo. Because I know for a fact you rigged that coin toss. This joke is from the first review special in chapter 11. They apparently flipped a coin to decide who would guard Siobhan. In fact, Runo did rig it. He used a double-sided coin. Cook's other eyebrow swirls down. How does that work? I'm sure we were all thinking that when the time skip occurred. No, he heated up his leg with that spinning from before. I know that officially, Sanji doesn't need to spin to ignite his legs anymore. But that just doesn't make sense to me, so I kept the spinning. He still does it in the anime, and this story is largely based off of the anime. Now Sanji just doesn't need to spin as much.